بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وصلوات الله وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It's good to see some of you for a while. I haven't seen you guys for a while. Been traveling around and soon be traveling again. Next week's session, and the reason this one is on Tuesday today, and we might even look at this. I think maybe moving it to Wednesday every once in a while, as opposed to doing a recorded double. We have a chat about that, maybe, because those are the two comparisons, isn't it? To do a recorded double if I'm traveling, or to just move it to Tuesday. But I'm traveling tomorrow, and next week's lesson will be in the IAIS, which is the Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies. That's Dr. Hashim Kamali's institute in Kuala Lumpur. And that will be next week, so that will be the road show, so that won't be here locally, but it'll be on the same time, right time, inshallah, next Wednesday, and then we're back in again in Shiloh. So most of the next couple of months are actually still around locally. Today's lesson is interesting. It's a nice lesson, actually. I enjoyed tonight's lesson. It's a good load of pages, but the way I've structured it, we should be able to breeze through it, inshallah. It's nice because it's the ending of our chapter, and it's a major chapter, so it's like a significant chapter, and this will be the closing of this chapter. And then next week we'll start the new book, Kitab al-Ghusl or Bab al-Ghusl. And also in this week's session, after we finish, inshallah, I hope to take some of the questions that were outstanding from Fiqh Salah, which many of you will benefit from, because they'll be presented on the screen as well, or presented on the portal, and everyone will benefit from that. So it'll be, of course, after the lesson, everyone is free to leave, but that'll be that little extra at the end. Okay, so let's start then. What are we talking about? We're talking about the final bit of text. وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الْمُحْدِثِ مَسَّ الْمُصْحَفِ and مَسَّ الْمُصْحَفِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَالطَّوَافِ. Yeah. So it is impermissible for one without wudu to touch the mushaf to pray or to perform the tawaf. A huge discussion needs to be made about the mushaf. It's a very interesting one, and let's start. We kind of began it yesterday, last week, when we said that Shaykh Uthaymeen starts off right. Mushaf, what's the mushaf? He says it's what we all understand is that which has the Quran written in it completely. So it's the physical copy of the Quran. That's what's called a mushaf. It's actually very interesting how many Muslims, I think more Paks than anything else, don't know what a mushaf is. It's not a phrase that they're used to. Whereas the Arabs, of course, they call it a mushaf all the time. Whereas in our culture, we don't call it mushaf. Yeah, what do we call it? Quran Majid, I think, isn't it? Quran Majid, yeah. I think that's it. So mushaf is the actual, as I said last week, suhuf, the pages put together, and the mushaf is what holds them together. It is the Quran, physical Quran. And Shaykh Uthaymeen said something very interesting, which there is some difference of opinion about, but he said that even if a single ayah is written on a piece of paper, it takes the ruling of the mushaf. And he said that even if it's half the Quran written on something, it takes the ruling of mushaf, if that's all that it is there. So if it's a page of writing, it takes the ruling of the mushaf. If you think about it, it makes sense, and you're already operating like that. You just didn't realize it. When you hear it, it sounds strange, but you know that if you have a mushaf page, you try to kind of burn it or whatever, like when you try and dispose of it, you act like it's the full Quran. So automatically from your culture you've already accepted it, but now you're hearing it academically that even an ayah written is considered the ruling of the mushaf. Now what's interesting, of course, about that is that this will now come back to us later. Remember this point when we're going to discuss the ruling on an iPad or a phone, an iPhone, and what the ruling is for touching that. And so it's going to become interesting. So anyway, straight into it then. The muhdith is the one who has no wudu. Yeah? No, he is ba wudu. Yes? And he... Ba wudu, be wudu? Be wudu? Be wudu. Sorry, be wudu. Yeah. See, I'm getting my bas and my ba's mixed up. Be wudu is the one who has no wudu. Yeah? So it doesn't matter whether it's hadath al-asghar or akbar. It doesn't matter which minor impurity or major ritual impurity. But if you don't have wudu, you are called a muhdith. No wudu. Alright? So what is the evidence? Straight away it is the ayah of Quran which all of the scholars use. In fact, we'll talk about who it is that uses who. But what are the evidences? They use the ayah or the ayat from Surah Al-Waqi'ah that indeed إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. We covered these verses last week. I'll just very quickly go over it again. في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه, okay, with a dhamma, إِلَّا الْمُطَّهَّرُونَ, okay, with a shadda, تنزيل من رب العالمين. So it is indeed a noble book in a preserved, it is a noble recitation in a preserved book. None touch it, except those who are purified. It is a revelation from the Lord of the worlds. So that's the translation of that. So the idea is, because it is Qur'anun Kareem, the wording is Qur'anun Kareem, so that refers to the Qur'an. And the idea is that none touch it except those who are purified, which is a straightforward done deal. Of course, what we are discussing now, and it's quite clear that actually the verse doesn't necessarily refer to the mushaf that we have, and those that are mutahharun does not necessarily refer to people who are here in the dunya, meaning humans, basically. So we're going to come to that. Also, we said that the way that it's been mentioned, you see, if I say to you, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون, okay, if I say to you, don't touch the mushaf, you're not allowed to touch it unless you're pure, that's said in a different way, in different Arabic, to a statement. This is what we call a khabar. A talab would be when I request you not to do it. Don't do it. You're not allowed to do it. Call it a request, call it an order. Then there's a different way of speaking, which is to mention a statement, a fact. Only the pure touch it. So that's a factual statement, which could then lead to an argument afterwards, that even though it's a factual statement and therefore doesn't come off as an order, it therefore doesn't necessarily have the strength of such a prohibition. Statement of fact, it could basically mean that therefore it's good for you therefore to be pure, because really, you know what, only the pure touch it. It's not like right in your face, like don't touch it. So this is one argument that was put forward. Anyway, the real thing is about the second evidence, because as you can see, the Quranic ayah has some discussion about it. So the real discussion is around the hadith, and that's why Shaykh Uthaymeen, we pick it up on page 316, where he says that the evidence they use is the letter, or it's a hadith, but then we discover that it's actually a letter, that the letter of Amr ibn Hazm. Amr ibn Hazm. And this is something which was written to him by the Prophet ﷺ, and it was given as a message to the people of Yemen. So it was given to Amr, okay, to give to the people of Yemen. And in this letter it says, Allah yamass al-Quran illa tahir, that none but the pure tahir will touch the Quran. None but the pure will touch the Quran. Okay, so first of all, let's just quickly understand where this narration comes from. This narration is a fascinating one. Remember, we say that in the Sunnah and in the Islam, there are a number of hadith that have become controversial, or there's a lot of discussion around them. We're talking hundreds of thousands of narrations, and maybe only 4,000 or 5,000 of them which are authentic. Okay, actually 4,000 or 5,000 altogether. Over 100,000 of different narrations, and amongst these 4,000 or 5,000, you can actually count, 20, 30, 50, 100 that have some very notoriety, or famous or infamous. because of lots of discussion around them, lots of kind of controversy, lots of strange things, lots of very interesting things, and so on. This is one of them. This is one of the famous hadith in Islam. And the reason for it is because many scholars criticized its authenticity, whereas those that defended it on a very interesting basis. They defended it on the fact that it was so well known and well spread and well acted upon by the companions and tabi'een that necessarily just the chain itself was not so important in this issue because it's so well spread. Watch what I mean. This hadith was narrated by Imam at-Tabarani and by Imam ad-Daraqutni and narrated by Imam al-Bayhaqi on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he said that this chain is not too bad. La ba'sa bih, it's okay. It was also narrated, this actual letter has also been narrated by Hakim ibn Hizam and Uthman ibn Abi al-As. And it was authenticated. This hadith was authenticated by Ishaq ibn Rahway from the Imam from At-Tabi'een, and Al-Shafi'i, Imam al-Shafi'i, and Ibn Abdul Barr, who is the Muhaddith of the West, the Maliki scholar. وَاحْتَجَّ بِهِ أحمد ibn Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad, this is interesting, he didn't authenticate the hadith, but he acted upon it. He acted upon this hadith. This hadith also has been discussed, the two references there. Talkhis al-Habir is the best work of a hadith checking of a fiqh text by the Shafi'i school. So it's written by Imam Ibn Hajar. This is Ibn Hajar taking a fiqh text which normally doesn't quote hadith. He just quotes facts, statements. And he went through it and he did the tahqiq, authenticated the hadith. It is very famous in its genre. The other most famous book in that genre is Nasb al-Raya, which is the other references that you can find these two. The reason I'm mentioning this is because these two books are very important for the Hanafi. This is the Hanafi version now. Nasb al-Raya is the tahqiq, meaning the authentication of the hadith in which book? Al-Hidayah. The book that you might have heard of, the Hanafi fiqh book called Al-Hidayah, translated into English as well. This authentication of this book has been done by Imam al-Zayla'i, the author of Nasb al-Raya. So Ibn Hajar is the author of Talkhis al-Habir. He's a muhaddith, he authenticates a book of fiqh. And you have Imam al-Zayla'i, who is a muhaddith, he authenticates a Hanafi book of fiqh. Why is this important? Because the books of fiqh always come under criticism, and especially when it comes to the Hanafis. They always come under criticism. You've got weak statements, weak, no evidence, this, no that. So these two boys came along and said, right, we'll deal with this one time. Went through all the statements, and for each statement produced a hadith, not only defending their position, authenticating it as well, but also the opposing opinion, looking at their opinions and bringing hadith and either supporting their own against them or weakening the hadith of the opposition. And Imam al-Zayla'i, for the Hanafi school, who was awesome at that. He did an unbelievable job, and of course he had the huge respect of Shaykh al-Albani, who wrote about him, who said he was inspired actually by al-Zayla'i. I wish I could find that quote, because I really enjoyed reading about that. That's where I picked up on al-Zayla'i. Anyway, so this hadith, it seems from the outset that it is an authentic narration. So keep that in mind, that it is an authentic narration. What does the narration say? It says tahir. What does the word tahir mean? هو المتطهر طهارة حسية من الحدث بالوضوء أو الغسل. Tahir means the one who purifies himself with water or something else, either to do wudu or ghusl. That's what the word tahir means. And he says that the mu'min is a pure being in his nature, and the mushaf is not touched except by in the main غالبا إلا بالمؤمنين, except by the believers. So when we say the word illa tahir, the pure touch it, then we know that this is not talking about a pseudo state of purity. Because if the hadith says that none but the pure touch it, and we know that it's only really the believers that are involved, with the Mus'haf, it's not like an area for non-Muslims and Muslims, then the idea is, because non-Muslims are not really in the discussion, it's only referring to Muslims. Therefore, it's talking about purity within the Muslims. That's the argument that's being put forward. It's talking about purity within the Muslims. Because someone could argue, hold on, this hadith is not evidence, because the Muslim is tahir and the non-Muslim is najis, and therefore this hadith means the non-Muslim shouldn't touch the Quran. You see what I'm saying? But a Muslim, he doesn't need wudu, he doesn't need anything, just pure by himself, let him touch the Quran, khalas. So what those people who are arguing for this, and I'm going to tell you who those people who are arguing for this position, they say that only the person who has wudu can touch the Quran. They're using the fact that they're saying that this hadith can only be referring to Muslims. Anyway, and then finally, the third evidence. So first one was Quranic ayah, second was the hadith, and the third evidence is logic. Okay, min an-nadhar sahih, from just good rationale, it's obvious that there is nothing, no kalam, no speech which exists which is more noble than the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made purification a obligation to make tawaf in His house and to read the book and so on and so forth and whatever, then to touch it, must have an even stronger, more obvious. You must have, some people say you must have wudu to recite it. It's the words of Allah. So to touch it, of course, it should be like that. Anyway, main point is this: whose position is this? That one is not allowed to touch the mushaf without wudu. This is the position of all four imams, all of the madahib. It's also the position of the companions. It has been expressly stated by Abdullah ibn Umar and by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas and Ali ibn Abi Talib and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. He said that not only was it stated expressly by them, but we do not have a single dissenting opinion from the companions, which of course leads to what we call a silent majority or silent consensus. And so it's a very, very strongly held position. Right. Yes.
With regards to the purification and the hadith and so on.
Yes.
Can the angels, we're referring to the mahrum, so can angels be impure? Can they stay of being impure, because it's referring to the people who are tahir only. So if they can't be impure, then it's not referring to them.
It's a good point. It'll come in a second.
And second point, so,
yeah.
You mentioned about all four imams focus on this is consensus across the board.
Yes.
Obviously including the exemptions as well. I mean, because obviously for the thing at a certain time.
No. That's coming. It's all coming. Okay. So this is the position of all of the scholars, as I said, and the four imams as well. And then on the opposite side, it was one of the famous imams. His name is Dawood al-Zahiri. Okay, and he is the founder of the Zahiri madhab, the literalist school, the school of the literalists. And he has a very interesting discussion upon this, and he's very famous in his opposition to this point. And he said, it is not impermissible, it's not haram to touch the Quran, the Mus'haf without wudu. What did he say? He said, first of all, my first evidence is that a person is, the status quo is that there's no evidence for it. There's no direct evidence that insists that I must have wudu, touch the Quran. Straight off, that's what he said. Secondly, he goes, let me respond to the evidences that have been said by the people. He goes, as for the ayah, then it is very, very clear that the one that which is not touched is the Kitab al-Maknoon, which is the preserved tablet. That's what's being referred to. And that, by the way, has been also said by the majority of Mufassirin as well. The people of Tafsir have also said the same, that actually refers to the preserved tablet. And also there is a support of that. And remember, when we look at Tafsir, we use Tafsir to explain Tafsir. Or we use the Quran, to explain Quran first. Before we apply our opinion, we use another ayah of the Quran. So when we look at, for example, in Surah Abasa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Quran as well. He says, كَلَّا إِنَّهَا تَذْكِرَةٌ فَمَنْ شَاءَ ذَكَرَ فِي صُحُفٍ مُكَرَّمَةٍ مَرْفُوعَةٍ مُطَهَّرَةٍ بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ كِرَامٍ بَرَرَةٍ. Okay? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says that this Quran in Surah Abasa, it is written in honored, exalted, في صحف مكرمة. exalted pure pages. Yeah, marfu'atin mutahhara. And by who? By the hands of noble and virtuous scribes. Which is obviously not talking about the humans, but rather talking about the malaika. And that's what he says. He says that, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says that this is clearly talking about the malaika. So what we have is two comparisons. بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَ is the same as لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ, that the people who don't touch except the pure are the same as the people who are the scribes, and that the suhufim, these pages which are mukarrama, is the same as Kitab al-Maknoon, meaning referring to this, the preserved sealed tablet, the original, the Lawh al-Mahfuz, which is out of the range of humans. So both verses support one another and refer to them like that. Now, that's their response immediately. That's the response immediately to the ayah. They said that as for the ayah which says Tanzilun min Rabbil Alameen, you remember we said last week that it says Quran which is revealed by the Lord of the worlds. Well, that would suggest that the Quran is the one which has been sent down. Well, actually, that's possible, but it's also possible that it's referring back to the original Quran, meaning in its conceptual form. It's not a very clear evidence, and this is what Shaykh Uthaymeen makes a point here. He says that whenever you have possibility of understandings or possibility of interpretations from an ayah, then it's not possible then to insist upon just one. It's not possible unless there's a supporting evidence. If you have a supporting evidence that takes it the other way, meaning like towards the angels, for example, not the humans, then it's not possible for you then to say that this can only be for the Quran being revealed. So what does Shaykh say? He goes, as for the real discussion, it's got to be around the hadith. The hadith, he goes straight off, is da'if. He says, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he goes, this hadith is da'if. He goes, you know why it's da'if? He goes, because it is a mursal hadith. Now, a mursal hadith means that there is no companion in between the Prophet ﷺ and the tabi'i who's narrating it. There is no companion. And of course, every mursal hadith is a form of a weak hadith. So already we're already in a problem from the beginning. Then he says something very interesting. He goes, وَإِذَا فَرَضْنَا صِحَّتَهُ, if we were just to assume for the sake of argument that it is authentic, just because it's so famous and so well known and so well spread amongst all the people, then the word in it that has been used, that none touch it except the tahir one, well, tahir, we know, is possible to refer to pure of heart. It's possible to refer to pure of heart, of heart from shirk, or it could also mean pure, meaning clean body from najasa, no najasa upon the body. Or it could mean tahir from breaking wudu, ritual impurity. Meaning that there's three possibilities. It could mean a person with wudu, it could be a person whose body is clean from najasa, or it could mean a person who is just Muslim and free from shirk. He goes, and therefore, when we have so many possibilities, therefore it's not possible again to single out just one and say we're gonna base it upon this and bang. Okay. And then he said also, وَكَذَا فَإِنَّ الطَّاهِرِ, and he goes also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ, that the mushrikun are najas, and that supports the idea that if the mushrikun are najas, then the mu'mineen are tahir. And so therefore that's a contrast between the two. And the Prophet ﷺ, he also said, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنْ لَا يَنْجُسْ, he said that the believer does not become impure. فَوَهَذَا فِيهِ نَفْيُ النَّجَاسَ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِ, so therefore this taking away of najasa from the believer obviously leaves him in a state of purity. He goes also, thirdly, to use rationale, he goes, how can anyone be using the rationale in this discussion? Because he goes, that's never going to be strong evidence. And by the way, Shaykh Uthaymeen is playing devil's advocate here, or angel's advocate, if you want to change the word, yeah. And he is saying that the Zahiriyya, he goes that there's no point us going into analogy and rationale, because the literalists, they don't even accept analogy and rationale when it comes to Islamic rulings. They only go by text. That's the whole point of being a literalist, yeah? That if you don't have a text, then we're not interested. So he goes, I'm never going to bother responding to that, because the Zahiri is not even going to accept that straight off. Okay. He goes, my opinion, Shaykh Uthaymeen, alayhi rahmatullah, عندي, he goes that their response to the ayah, talking about the Zahiris, yeah? He goes, their response to the ayah is wadih. It's as clear as the sun. And that's absolutely the correct response. There's no doubt about the fact that Dawood al-Zahiri got that right. That the actually use that verse and to make it out that that's referring to the believers, and to make that out that that's referring to the Quran that we have is wrong, and therefore for the majority to use all that, don't waste your time. He goes, forget that. He goes, I agree with them on that. وَأَنَا أُوَافِقُهُمْ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. He goes, I agree with him on that. He goes, He goes, as for the hadith of Amr ibn Hazm, he goes, yes, its chain is actually weak, as they have said. لكن من حيث قبول الناس له واستنادهم على فيما جاء فيه من أحكام الزكاة والديات وغيرها. He goes, but when we look at this hadith and how well spread it is and how well accepted it was by the tabi'een and by the early scholars of the salaf and by the imams, and how they accepted this hadith and all of its rulings, because this hadith is a long hadith. It talks about zakah issues. It talks about blood money issues. It's a comprehensive letter for the people of Yemen to do with the basis of their religion, the principles of their deen, and so forth. His point is that this hadith is so well accepted. He goes, well, hadith. He goes, from the time of the tabi'een until our time now, this hadith has been accepted and acted upon. And they say it has no basis. He has no basis, and it started from all the way then and until now, and it has no basis. He goes, this is ba'id jiddan. He goes, this is very unlikely, to make such a statement. It's a very inaccurate statement. Right, then he says, he goes, in this issue, he's kind of talking about his younger days. He goes, in this issue, I used to lean towards the opinion of the Zahiri madhab. Meaning that it's not haram. Okay? Lakin, he goes, but when I deeply thought about this whole issue, okay, when I thought about this wording in this hadith, that none touches the Quran except the pure one, and the word tahir, it is always used to refer to a person who is free from hadath, ritual impurity. It's used to refer to wudu, purity. Either you've made ghusl or either you've made wudu. He goes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُم مِّنْ حَرَجٍ وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُم. Allah doesn't want to put a difficulty upon you. Rather, what He wants to do is to purify you. Now, he goes, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنْ عَادَةِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يعبر عن المؤمن بالطاهر. He goes, if you look at the sunnah of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, it's not his way to call the believer pure. It's not a word which he uses. If he's referring to a Muslim, he doesn't really call him pure, because لأن وصفه بالإيمان أبلغ. Because if you want to praise him or talk about how pure he is, then we use the word iman, because that's far more powerful, far more clean, far more stronger, far more important. تبين لي, and then it became very clear to me that it is not permissible to touch the Quran whoever does not have wudu. Whether that is from ritual impurity of a minor one, or passing away and going sleep, whatnot, or major sexual impurity, etc., etc. And what I depend upon in my argument is not the verses of Quran, because that they don't have a chance. But I depend upon this hadith of Amr ibn Hazm, and that its text is very, very clear, and I am happy with that. And I don't want to refer to what the majority are saying about the verses, because the qiyas upon that is not good enough. He goes, what if someone says that the letter that was written to the people of Yemen they were not Muslims at the time, so that actually that itself is a proof that the word tahir refers to Muslims, because the letter was being sent to people who weren't Muslims. So, hey, non-Muslims, just let you know, the Quran's coming, but none are allowed to touch it except the pure. Pure, therefore, meaning Muslims. And so he goes, أن التعبير الكثير من قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلق الشيء بالإيمان. He goes, well, hold on. Why would it stop the Prophet ﷺ from saying that none will touch the Quran except the believers? Why would he use the word pure? Why not just come out and say believers? Why would he not say people of Iman? And he goes, no, I don't think that this is clear. So he goes, فَالَّذِي تَقَرَّرَ عِنْدِي أَخِيرًا. He goes, after much thinking and so on and so forth, it came upon me that one is not allowed to touch the Mus'haf. It's haram to touch the Mus'haf without wudu. This is the position of Shaykh Uthaymeen alayhi rahmatullah. This is my position as well. This is the class position. This is not the position of our Shaykh and our teacher Shaykh Kihlan, and it never was as well. He considered it to be a recommended action only. In fact, there's no difference amongst anyone that it's a recommended act. The difference only really comes into it is that is it obligatory or not. It is obligated by the four Imams, by the companions, by contemporaries, by Ibn Taymiyyah in the Middle Ages, by Shaykh Uthaymeen in this time, and this is the position of the class. For those who will be checking, this will be the position of the class. Yes.
So would you get punished if you touched it without?
So we're going to talk about now all of the exceptions and covers. We just wanted to establish the ruling. Once the ruling is established in our mind, we can now talk about exceptions. Yes.
What happened to our rule of if you were make something haram, you need a clear Sharia evidence?
Well, you see, this is a good question. Zafar says, what happened to our rule? And by that, he's talking about Shaykh Uthaymeen's opinion. What happened to our rule that there needs to be a clear Shari'i evidence to establish something which is haram? The answer to that is, for him, this hadith, even though the sanad itself, he finds it to be weak, it itself is a clear Shari'i evidence. That لا يمسه, meaning that it is not permissible. It's a clear text for him. It is not permissible for the one who isn't tahir to touch the Quran.
Explain that devil's advocate. It sounds more like, in this day and age, something that we say is taboo, that you couldn't.
Agreed, and that's what we said before. That's the difference between when you change the grammar between a statement of fact, as you said, taboo statement, and an order. Whereas the statement in the hadith is an order. Grammatical construct of it is that it is an order. And that's the clear Shari'i evidence that Shaykh Uthaymeen is looking for, and he gets in the end. I mean, as he said himself, he was on the other opinion. Yeah.
So if you come back to the actual ayah of the Quran, you've already said that there's differences in translation of that. It's an ambiguous statement.
Not in translation, in interpretation.
Interpretation.
Yes, interpretation. So you know what Ibn Taymiyyah said? Let me tell you what Ibn Taymiyyah said. Ibn Taymiyyah said I also believe that this is referring to the angels, and I also think that the Kitab al-Maknoon is referring to the preserved tablet and not the Mus'haf that we have. He said, even if that's the case, we still take the ruling from it. It's like almost to say, this is his words exactly, he goes, it's almost to say as if the Quran is hinting that only the pure touch it, the angels. Think about that. Only the pure touch it, the sacred tablet, which has the Quran in it. Think about that. Now that we're sending the Quran down to you. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah said. He said they establish a base principle with the kind of the foundations, the angels, who are our representatives, and the Quran itself, which is a representation of the speech of Allah in Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, in the preserved tablet. And so now what we have with us, it's a kind of like a far, like a branch. So this is what Ibn Taymiyyah said. So he's also like Shaykh Uthaymeen. He's not going to try and pretend around it that it's, referring to people, referring to the Quran. It is referring to those two, but we can still take a ruling from it ourselves. You can see that it is the main evidence is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ and this clear belief amongst all the companions and tabi'een that one doesn't do it. It's like almost like a silent ijma', and it's like the done thing and the known thing. Right, now, the question is now a number of masail. And by the way, there's an aqidah issue here as well that some of the scholars talked about. From them, Ibn Qudama. He goes that so if you get too lackadaisical with the mushaf, imagine if this was a mushaf, okay, and we've got Arabic words here, right? And obviously we're going to talk about this in detail now, but if you say that it's okay to touch this without wudu, right? It's almost that you're transferring to this, like this is just ink and paper. Like mentally, it will lead to that. When a person starts losing respect for the actual wording itself and just seeing it like ink and paper, then it becomes for him ink and paper. Now, that becomes kufr. That leads to a theological problem. Because of course the Muslims have agreed upon, Ahl Sunnah have agreed upon, that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It mustn't be seen as ink and paper as such. It's the spoken words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's almost what they're trying to say is that by establishing and obligating wudu for the actual physical mushaf is like almost protecting the theological nature of our understanding of the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it doesn't become in their minds like just normal ink and paper. It's an interesting point. The question arises, number of questions. First question, is it haram to touch the Quran or is it haram to touch the mushaf? So the Quran is that which is recited. Al-Quran, that which is recited. Is it that which is haram or is it the mushaf which the Quran is in? So if we had it here, then why don't you just grab a mushaf so we can use it, any mushaf, and then I can show it. So the Shafi'i say, the Shafi'i school, they said that actually what is haram is the actual letters itself, not the margins. So if the margins have got clear empty space, then those I don't have a problem, whereas the words itself, those are what are haram to actually touch. So if we look at this mushaf here, so according to the Shafi'i madhab, then to touch the actual letters would be what is haram, and to touch these pages and these hawamish as we call them, okay, that would be something permissible. And he says because the hawamish are just waraq, just paper, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ. Very interesting istidlal. In Surah Al-Buruj he says the dharf is غير المظروف. He goes that the entry is different to what it is entered into. The ayah shows that there's a difference between the two. Turn this thing off. This is the thing, isn't it? The thermostat. The dharf is not the... Do you understand the point? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, no, it is the majestic Quran which is in the preserved tablet, there's a differentiation between the two. One is in the other. And the second one was not called the Quran. The first one was called the Quran. بَلْ هُوَ قُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ فِي لَوْحٍ مَحْفُوظ. Like saying, these are letters which are in a mushaf. This is the Quran in a collection of pages. And therefore, the Shafi'i school, they said, therefore touching the cover, touching the pages and the hawamish, not a problem. It's the letters themselves. The letters themselves. And they also said, and then the Hanbali school, they said it is haram to touch the mushaf, touch the Quran and that which is written upon. وَمَا كُتِبَ فِي. So the full mushaf entirely haram to touch except with wudu. Only it's allowed for the young one, the children, and they said not the Quran, only for the lawh, meaning the, what did we call it again? Board. Yeah, the board. You know the board that you write Quran on? What's the actual name for it? What do we call it? Paks call it? Takhti. Exactly. Takhti. Yes? So the actual board that you write, and in our times it could be the blackboard as well, okay? The small blackboard or a small whiteboard, you know, that you carry around with you or whatever. So this is, and according to the Hanbalis, they said that this is as long as the hands do not touch the actual letters. As long as the hands do not touch the actual letters. And that's the Hanbali position. And you'll find that in the reference number 3 there, Al-Iqna', which is of course the Hanbali fiqh book. Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says, there's no doubt this is a safer position. This is no doubt a safer position. He says that I prefer to have the ruling not the Shafi'i position, but the Hanbalis. He said that whatever follows something is itself part of it. So everything which is continuous to something takes the same ruling, not an individual ruling. That's his position. Ibn Qudama, I will say, just so that you know that there's a difference of opinion within the Hanbali madhab. Ibn Qudama actually allowed a person not to, not necessarily to touch the mushaf, but to be, for example, carrying it in this kind of manner. Alright, carrying it with something separate. And of course, all the scholars allow someone with gloves, for example, to touch it. And they would often use twigs, for example, to turn pages, etc., etc., or using some kind of cloth. Also, a cover outside the cover of the norm. So this is the mushaf, and if you use one of our pack specials, you know, one of those big, thick velvet jobbies, yeah? Nice purple number, then that'd be great. Pink one, bonus, yeah? It isn't ghulaf, that's the word. What a word. What a word. A far underused word, that ghulaf. Oh my days. Right, so, you know, when we were young, we were so ghulaf extreme. Every single book that would come home from school, it would be ghulafed up. It would be ghulafed up with the best wrapping paper, and if not, then newspaper. But we would ghulaf up those books. So if we're going to ghulaf our books, yeah, bakwas books, yeah, nonsense, why wouldn't we ghulaf our Quran? Huh? With the biggest velvet, yeah? Don't mess about, you know? Right, so, okay, good. Right, now, Sheikh says, he's saying that, is it really true, can we discuss this issue about young people, because how are they going to memorize the Quran? Yani young, referring to what? What does young mean? What about those who are prepubescent children? He goes, some of the scholars said that they are not included in this because they are not mukallaf, they are not legally responsible aslan. Alright? وإذا كانوا غير مكلفين فكيف نلزمهم بشيء لا يتعلق به كفر. He goes, if they're not mukallaf, then how can we discuss something which is about kufr or not kufr? And we wouldn't, sorry, I said that wrong. He goes, if they're not legally responsible, then they can't be held for statements of kufr or not. He goes, then obviously something less than kufr they're not going to be held responsible for. So then what about something which is a minor sin? He goes, of course it's not applicable to them. And he goes, the pen has been lifted from them, as the Prophet ﷺ said. He goes, the separate question should be, is the wali, their guardian, commanded to make sure that so the guardian has to stop the child doing it, not the child picking it up and touching it. The guardian, does he sin if he says to his kids, do what you want, knock yourself out? You know what I'm saying? So that's the real issue. Does he have to? Alright, that's the question. The Shafi'i school, he says no. We just like we do not obligate the child to make wudu, then we do not obligate him to touch the. We don't have to prevent him from touching the mushaf either. When he doesn't have to make wudu when he's young, why are we then having to make him not touch the mushaf as well? Because he's not mukallaf. And he goes also that we're going to put big mashaqqa upon this parent and start commanding him and ordering him to do things, that which is not obligatory upon him aslan. It's not obligatory upon him to do that. And he goes, this become a real problem. He goes, as for the most famous opinion and the well-known opinion in the Hanbali school, he goes, it is not permissible for the child to touch the Quran at all, as we just saw, except with wudu. And not only that, but and that the wali must command the child not to do that. He'll be held sinful if he doesn't. The same way that the wali is held accountable in obligating salah and wudu upon the child. And salah and wudu at age of 7, and then 8 and 9 and then 10. And we know that he is obligated to do that, right? And if he doesn't do that, he will be sinful. He has to follow the system. And that's before puberty. So he goes, this is the position of the Hanbali school. He goes, however, the Hanbali school did make an exception for their board. Okay, he goes, they did make an exception for the board. He goes, as long as they're writing it. You see the idea with the board. You see, why is this discussion happening? This is all about memorizing the Quran. Now, obviously, in our time, this is not what we do. Back in the day, to memorize the Quran, you would hear it, learn Arabic, and then write it out. And then you rub it off and then write it out. Now when you're writing something, you know we're touching the actual words, the letters. And so that's why they always allow it. And they said that they just mustn't touch the actual words. And there wouldn't be a reason to. So that's how they get around this issue all the time. And he goes that this is very different, like the Mus'haf. Because the Mus'haf itself, when it is written in it, it stays there as a permanent fixture. Whereas the board is erased and it's not so permanent. He goes, what's similar to this, and this is interesting, this is for our discussion now about computers and so on. He goes, if a person wrote the Quran the wrong way round, back to front, sorry. If he wrote the Quran back to front, and then he held it to a mirror, then you would only read it correctly in the mirror, yes? And he goes that, are we to say that it's haram to touch the mirror? Think about that. So if you write it back to front, and then you put it in the mirror, and now you're looking at the mirror. If we touch this mirror, is that allowed? And that's got the proper Mus'haf on it now, or you're seeing an image of the Mus'haf, isn't it? So he said that is something which is allowed to do. So he's trying to basically say that the ruling for the lawh is different. He goes, it is different from the, and he goes that it is different. The fuqaha, he said, they also said that it's not permissible to touch the blackboard, a subura, big blackboard or big whiteboard upon which is written, but it is allowed to touch the letters on it, but it's allowed to write on it the same as we have with the actual small boards. He goes, it's important to differentiate between something large which is immobile and something which is carried around in oneself as well. So there's lots of discussions around the actual nature and appearance of this. How can I conclude this point myself? I want to conclude and say this. Shaykh Uthaymeen himself is clear, in my opinion, that he considers obligatory for one to have wudu before he can touch the Quran. I think we can agree upon that. As for now, the modern day presentations of the Quran, then we have different categories. We're going to look at a few remaining ones. The most important, actually listen to what he says here. He goes, what about book of tafsir? He goes, the book of tafsir is simple. If the tafsir is more than the Quran, which it always is of course, then it doesn't take the ruling of the Mus'haf, and it's not considered a Mus'haf, and one's not to touch the actual words of the Mus'haf, but the rest of the whole book, and flicking the book and turning the pages and reading from it is something which is permissible and allowed without wudu. Why? Because a book of tafsir is not considered a Mus'haf. When it is majority, that would therefore be the same in our time for translation. And I believe every translation, and I had a long think about this many years ago when we started doing da'wah and giving those kind of Mus'hafs out to other people. I cannot think of any example of any Mus'haf translation that has both Arabic and English where the Arabic is more than the English. And so I do not consider any of those Mus'hafs either. So, I mean, today now they do it super safe and they only give out, non-English only. I don't know about that, I think that, a non-Muslim, you see a little bit of fancy behavior there, kind of adds a little bit of maza, to the English. That's why I prefer that. But I mean, to be honest, the best translations like Professor Abdul Halim Penguin one, Oxford Oxford University print, that's English only, and it looks alright. And Sahih International one, which is the one which is printed now, mass, it's yani. I gave one to the taxi driver yesterday, who brought me back from London, or the station anyway, and we're having a little chat, this, that, whatever. And when I was giving it to him, I thought, so I went back and I got another book as well. It looks a bit empty, you know what I mean? Didn't look stylish enough, so I gave him a bit of that as well. But I did look at it and I did think, bit thin paper, bit this, that. You want a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. But anyway, it doesn't have the ruling of Mus'haf. Tafsir does have the ruling of Mus'haf. Question is, what about when it's 50-50? Imagine we have a scenario where it's 50-50. What do you think?
You said before, any piece of paper is written about which takes the ruling of Mus'haf. So would that not include in there?
In the 50-50 you mean?
No, even the first option you gave. For example,
what did we say? Ayah by itself. Remember? In the definition, I made it very, very clear to say that any piece of paper where it's only the ayah by itself, if it's torn or a page, that gets the ruling of the Mus'haf. But if it's a page, okay, like a letter, And the evidence for this, by the way, the evidence, if you're thinking, what's the evidence for this, is the letter that he wrote to Caesar. The Prophet ﷺ's letter that had the Quran in it, had only an ayah, but the letter was not considered like a mushaf. It was spread and carried by everyone and so on and so forth. So that's where the theory comes from. That's the evidence, I mean. So today, if a book is 50, so I've made it very clear. The question is 50-50. What do you give 50-50 to? Always when you're in 50-50 and there's a possibility of haram, then you put the haram forward. Because the issues about haram halal is not an issue about something else or something else. It's like, is it haram or is it not? So you give the haram the precedent. Now, let's quickly finish this discussion with the mushaf on smartphones and apps. The real issue is this now. Is it permissible for a person who doesn't have wudu to use a mushaf on a tablet or a iPhone? Answer is yes, because that doesn't necessarily mean you touch it. Like a computer, for example, Quran Explorer on your laptop, you press the button to next page, next page, next page. So that's not a problem to actually physically carry around the whole computer and so on, and a tablet if you've got a button. The real issue comes because when you're swiping on it. So now we have to decide that the screen upon which the letters appear, is this something which is the actual letters, or is it the same ruling as the mirror? So I'd like to open that up for discussion, because no scholar can give you an answer on that. They'll give a subjective understanding based upon what they think. Everyone agrees that a mirror is not a mushaf. And you should also know that the basic ruling of a mushaf is given to anything upon which the verses are written on, and written means inscribed. Written doesn't mean just ink. Back in the day, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was inscribed in thick parch, in wood, on bone. It wasn't written in ink, and it was not all of it was written in ink. And so the ruling is about things which are exclusively Quran, inscribed or written. So the question is now, what is the nature of the screen? What's the nature of the screen? It's a liquid crystal display, which therefore means
which is a liquid which with the gases forms the letters.
It's just light, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's light. I mean, when you look at that, what do you think? What's the first thing that comes to you when you see that?
The first thing, it wouldn't remain there like that, would it? It would disappear. It would go away. The letter would disappear from there.
So when I swipe that, it moves. It's gone. Then it's the next page. Then it's the next page. Huh? You mean the screen is something which is on top? And what are you? You're not actually touching something? What are you touching? Are you touching that letter? I think you are, you know. This is an LCD screen, yes? Liquid crystal. Liquid crystal is something which is it's not an image. It's not a substance, isn't it? But I don't know, I'm asking the question here. Is it not a substance? Which, for example, I'm just saying that because I get this idea that if I press it really, really hard, then it starts to bleed. You know what I mean? Is that me dreaming or not? No? You know when a pixel
deforms the whole.
It deforms the matrix.
Yeah.
So there is actual liquid.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely.
It's LCD, liquid crystal display.
So yeah, where does the liquid come from, right? LCD. So I get that feeling, and I've seen it, when you press really, really hard, there's liquid. So I'm saying to you that it's possible to say that this screen is touch sensitive or pressure, whatever it's called, yeah? And so when you're pressing down and it recognizes, I think it does heat recognition as opposed to anything else, but whatever it is, it's your finger touching a screen which is pressurized on a pixel which is touching some form of electric connection which is touching the liquid itself or whatever that creates light.
I think it's covered by Gorilla Glass, isn't it? So I think it's underneath, isn't it?
But it's all connected, touching.
There's no direct link with finger touching the
It's like
letter.
wearing a glove, isn't it?
It's like wearing a glove.
Several barriers between your
Go
finger.
over, press your phone. If you press it.
It must be like having a cover over the text.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
if that screen was
Like a mushaf which is laminated?
Because if the screen cracks,
Yep.
it doesn't affect the written words underneath it.
That's a good point, right? If the screen cracks, you can actually still see the words underneath it without distortion. Just the screen is cracked.
It can affect as well. Depends how.
It can affect. Okay, so another question has come to mind. If I was to laminate this Quran, would you touch it? Let's have a vote. Let's have a vote. Let's have a vote. If this was laminated, put your hands up. If you touch it, put your hands up. Hi, so I can see confident thingy.
Technically, but culturally, no.
No. Technically, we're talking about because there's no doubt that Muslims should always have wudu for Quran. No doubt. 7. The rest of you, then I'm saying that no. Yes. Sorry. The rest of you saying you wouldn't. Yeah. Wouldn't. Why not? Too close? Doesn't feel right?
Because it's become part of it.
Because it's touching, absolute touching. It's part of it. Especially if you follow the Hanbali kind of position.
It's been touching and fused. It's become fused to it.
So is that better or worse?
Worse then, isn't it? Because it's fused now, whereas a glass lies over something, whereas that isn't.
Yeah, she's not saying basically that's even worse, meaning even more haram, his point. Because the glass at least is a barrier, whereas that laminate is like proper into it now, it's fused. So it's like even more part and parcel of the.
But does the laminate not still count as a layer? As a thin
So then, if it didn't count as a layer, why is it that the scholars themselves consider this front page to be part of the mushaf, which shouldn't be touched? It's like it's not possible for us to, according to the Shafi'is, and the majority, in fact, to walk around the mushaf like this. You see, and say that I'm not touching the mushaf. They consider all this to be connected. The Shafi'is would say, right, okay, the Quran only starts there, right? The Quran is only this, like that, okay? Whereas to hold it in this manner, it wouldn't be.
So for that reason, then it's a humbling position, isn't it?
I can tell you now that the scholars that are giving fatwa on this are not giving it based upon madhab. They're giving it using madhabs to help them because this is a new scenario. Yeah.
What about if we read it as tafsir? So if you go on your phone, more scholars than Quran,
So that's a good point, right? The brother's saying, what if we treat it as tafsir as a phone which has so much other things, and in fact the program itself probably has more pages of tafsir than it has mushaf. The reason that's not applicable here is because what you're actually seeing is just nothing but mushaf. It's like, that's it, pure mushaf in front of you. That's the same ruling as, is it allowed to take this to the toilet with this showing? You see, that's interesting. All of us are like, whoa, just want to slow down there, you know what I mean? We're not doing that. But no one says a problem if we turn it off and then take it to the toilet, because it's all gone off the screen, it's nowhere there, nowhere near, etc. Yeah.
I was going to say it's primarily a phone, so it can disappear, it can come on, etc., etc.
So that's the argument, like primarily a mirror, and then it shows, yeah.
There's two sides of things. It seems as though, like the Shafi'i opinion, it's about the actual
What letters itself.
touching it.
Yep.
But the other side is more about permanency. So, like you said, if you put the laminate cover on it, it's become permanent.
Yep.
It depends which side you want to sit on. If you consider that
know what it
it's
is?
about the layers, then you wouldn't touch it even with.
Yep.
You can actually swipe on the top of the phone without actually touching the pages.
Shut up, man.
Yeah, you can do, yeah. That solves the problem.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, of course it does, yeah.
Which program are you on?
I'm on Batul, isn't it? Yeah, one.
My one does. Oh, it does. You're right.
Yeah, without touching the pages. That's it. Problem solved.
That's a good one. Yeah. Look, yeah. If you actually go to the bottom, it changes the page.
You don't need to touch it.
Maybe it's because they're touching it.
Yeah, touching it. Yeah, but look. I mean, look. Not touching the words. So I want you to know that there is an acceptable difference of opinion there. Okay. And I have to say that my mind is that it's not mushaf, and that I believe that it can be used, and I believe that it can be touched, but my heart says no, that there should still be wudu. My heart says no doubt is safer, but obviously if we are able to change the page, for example, by pressing, one button or whatever, then there's not an issue. If you're able to avoid the words itself, then it's not an issue. The safe position is obviously to treat it like that, and there's no doubt about that. I can tell you, Sheikh Kehlan himself, long time ago, his opinion was that it takes the ruling of a mushaf, which is ironic because Sheikh Kehlan doesn't see it obligatory to have wudu for the mushaf anyway, right? So to make it clear, he doesn't believe it's obligatory. But as every scholar does, everyone believes it's sunnah, it's good. Likewise, he says, Quran, this is the same as that. He goes, anything which the Quran appears upon takes the ruling of the Quran. Now that's a nice, easy, safe principle to have. It's a nice, safe, easy principle to have. The real issue is that ethically, should we be thinking like that? Are we trying to do like some kind of Jewish number on that, when we kind of say that, this is not really kind of Quran, fish on the Friday, no fish on the Saturday.
Yeah, but then if you look at Subura, you can write the whole Quran on a Subura.
Right.
Okay, but you won't take it in the toilet, then would you?
But you wouldn't take it to the toilet, yeah.
But then you wipe the whole, clean.
The blackboard, yeah.
Then, you could technically say that to the toilet. Because it's now got nothing on it. So isn't it the same as the phone that you've got it on
Maybe.
at one point in time?
Yeah, I think so, yep.
Just going back to the issue where the laminate was good.
Laminate.
Well, the Hanabila said that what is written upon, so it's not written on the laminate, but it's written on a piece of paper. So like the velvet, like covering that, basically still covering the letters, but you're not actually touching the letters, but it's not written upon it.
That could be an argument, yeah. That the barrier is something which is on top and not underneath, not parts of it. That's possible, yeah.
Can we take the feelings out of this? For example,
Take the feelings, you mean take the packness out of it, you mean, yeah?
that's what I see.
Yeah.
For example, if you projected the Quran.
If you projected the Quran onto a wall, would you say that to go...
Say that the wall is haram to touch now.
Yeah, no one's going to say that, yeah? No one's going to say that the Quran is... that the wall is haram to touch.
I probably would. So what I'm saying is that...
I don't even think a pack would probably... I don't think so.
These are all projections.
Yeah.
Let's say that on the TV that you've got the Quran, you're watching the Quran on the TV. Is it haram to touch the TV? These are all projections. It's not a physical thing that you're touching.
Yes. Yeah, no, I genuinely think that there are good arguments for both sides. My position is this, is that it's always best to have wudu. No doubt. And by the way, we're talking about touching. We're not talking about reciting, yeah.
As in, what about just general handling, buying from the shop, moving it from one cupboard to another cupboard,
By cover, then that's the same. But if it has a cover around it, then so, like I said, I think they should be recommended for everyone, and the class position is that it's the general ruling. I mean, it's not part of the text here, but I personally think that we should always be on the safe side that issue. But we wouldn't criticize someone who didn't do it because of the khilaf in the issue. Listen, we're going to stop there because I have to just finish off this chapter. Okay then, so Salah, the next one, and it is impermissible. What's the text? This chest is going to kill me, man. So much drink some cold water. It is impermissible for one without wudu to touch the mushaf or to pray. Okay, so the prayer is forbidden for the muhdith. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, idha qumtum ila as-salat faghsilu wujuhakum. When you stand for prayer, then wash your face. And then it's very clear that from the Quranic ayah, if you want to pray, you've got to make wudu. That's absolutely clear. We've done all that. And subhanAllah, he makes a point here, and this is something which we need to spend a few minutes on. He goes, this is clear that this is a condition. Therefore, it is not permissible for a Muslim to pray whilst he does not have wudu. Now you might think, okay, well that's obvious. But it's not obvious. How many people do you know that do that once they've broken their wudu? Maybe they pass wind in the prayer and they're too embarrassed. And that embarrassment then keeps them there in that position and they carry on praying. What's the ruling upon that person? Sheikh says, he goes, he goes, this is, according to some of the scholars, istihza, meaning it is mocking the prayer. And there is absolutely no doubt this person becomes kafir by that. Kafir. فهو كافر لاستهزائه وإن كان متهاونا فقد اختلف العلماء رحمهم الله في تكفيره. He goes, if this person is mocking the prayer, right? So let me just make this clear. Hold on. A person who prays the prayer, this is not the same one as the one who passes when he is embarrassed. There's a person who prays the prayer without wudu. To mock the prayer, he's a kafir. Like, whatever. I don't need to make wudu or whatever. I don't know. He goes, as for the one who is not wanting to do it, either because he's ashamed or embarrassed, or he's not aware, or whatever, or sinning, or he wants to but he can't be bothered. That's the other one. Yeah, he wants to but he can't be bothered to go to the to the toilet, or it's far away, like in a haram. Yeah, and he can't. I'll continue now. Whatever. He goes, the ulama differed over whether he's a kafir or not. So you do understand the seriousness of the discussion. They differed fi takfirihi. So the madhab of Abu Hanifa is that he is not to be excommunicated. He is not kafir. Okay? لأن من صلى وهو محدث مع علمه بإيجاب الله الوضوء فهذا كالمستهزئ والاستهزاء. Sorry, I read that completely wrong. He is kafir. He is kafir because he says that there's no doubt about the mustahzi', the one who mocks it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very, very clear in the Quran, Surah Tawbah, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Was it Allah and His signs and His messenger that you're mocking at? لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا, no excuse, قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ, you have disbelieved after you had faith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Abu Hanifa said, whoever prays whilst he doesn't have wudu, knowing that Allah has obligated wudu for that prayer, is like the one who mocks the prayer. So he's taking the hardcore approach. As for the madhab of the three imams, they said that no, it is not kufr because it's a major sin, and وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ تَرْكِهِ أَنْ يَكُونَ مُسْتَهْزِئًا. And he goes, it's not possible, and this is of course the class position, and it's the correct position. He says it's not necessary that to say, it's not doesn't rationally lead on that the one who doesn't make wudu and pray, that doesn't mean that he's mocking. It means other things, like we just said, embarrassment, shame, whatever, whatnot. And kufr, it has to be something that you believe. When we talk about kufr, it has to be something you believe. It can't be mistakes and shame and embarrassment and things like that. Right. وَلِهَذَا قُلْنَا. He goes, so our position, Shaykh Uthaymeen goes, he prays without wudu, mocking the prayer, he's kafir. And if he doesn't, then he's not kafir, but he is in big trouble. Alright, the second evidence for the prayer is the hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept the prayer except without purification. This hadith has been narrated by Imam Muslim. And then the hadith which is narrated by Imam Ahmad, that there is no prayer without purification. And then in another hadith which is narrated by Imam Bukhari, like وَاللَّهُ صَلَاةَ أَحَدِكُمْ إِذَا أَحْدَثَ حَتَّى يَتَوَضَّأَ. Allah does not accept the prayer of any one of you, and if you have broken your wudu, until you make wudu. So, very, very clear. And then the third evidence, ijma'a. The entire nation of the Muslims have agreed that it is haram for the muhdith to pray without wudu. He goes, the real issue that we need to talk about is to define what prayer is. That's the real discussion. Everyone's thinking about prayer and that's the end of it. No, he goes, we should define what prayer is. He goes, well, the prayer that the Prophet ﷺ told us about was the prayer that starts off with Takbiratul Ihram, Allahu Akbar, and it ends with Taslim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, regardless of how many ruku' or sujood therein. That is what the prayer of the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. So what kind of prayer are those? The 5 daily prayers, Jum'ah, the 2 Eid prayers, the prayer for rain, the prayer for the eclipse, and the funeral prayer. And he goes, and the funeral prayer. And he repeats, and the funeral prayer, because the janazah opens up with a takbir and it ends muhtatimatun bit taslim, and therefore, according to the Sharia, it is what we call a prayer. Why does he make that point? Because there's no sujood in it, Why else does he make that point? Because Abu Hanifa does not consider, as does Ibn Taymiyyah, by the way, they both did not consider Salatul Janazah as Salah. They did not consider it to be as Salah. They consider it to be a dua. Okay, a dua. And there's some discussion about that. But anyway, watch this. Okay, so some of the scholars, they said, no, inna salah hiya allati fiha ruku' wa sujud. They said that no, a prayer must have ruku' and sujud. And others said that it must be a prayer that has 2 units or more. And إن الصلاة هي التي تكون ركعتين فأكثر إلا الوتر فهو صلاة ولو ركعة. They said that it must be 2 units or more, other than witr. Witr is an exception, that's allowed as well. Shaykh Uthaymeen says that the first position is the correct one. That the salah is something which opens with takbir, ends with the taslim. Doesn't matter whether it has ruku', sujood, 0 or 20. But if it begins with takbir and ends with taslim, and it has words in between and actions in between in a set order, it is considered to be a prayer. You may be thinking, why is this discussion happening? And the answer is, because we want to try to understand the ruling for sajdat al-tilawa and sajdat al-shukr. That's got to be the discussion, isn't it? You see people doing that all the time. The real question is, that do they need to have wudu for those? So the first of all, he says, in our madhab, the Hanbali madhab, he goes that salah definitely opens up with takbir and it ends with taslim. It ends with taslim. ولهذا يشرع عندهم أن يكبر إذا سجد وإذا رفع ويسلم. وبناء على هذا يحرم المحدث أن يسجد للتلاوة أو شكر وهو غير طاهر. He goes, therefore, and this is very interesting. He goes, in the Hanbali madhab, they consider sajda shukr and sajda tilawa to be prayers. So that means that you have to say Allahu Akbar when you make it, and do the sajda and give the salam. So you got to go Allahu Akbar, make the sajda and give salam, and you have to make wudu. That's the Hanbali position for the sajda of tilawa and sajda shukr. What is sajda tilawa? Sajda tilawa is when you come across a verse of the Quran in which the scholars have agreed that one should make a prostration upon after you read it, of which there are 15 in the Quran. What is a sajda to shukr? The sajda shukr is the prostration for thankfulness, which is what someone does if they hear some brilliant news or something harmful has been kept away or some great stuff, etc. That's what those two are. According to the Hanbalis, you got to go Allahu Akbar, go down, do it, and give salam, and you have to have wudu. The real question is that Shaykh Uthaymeen is trying to say, he goes that if you'd really think about this though, you'll see that the sunnah indicates that actually they are not prayers. They are not prayers. Why? He goes, the first evidence is that the Prophet ﷺ would make sajda for tilawa all the time, and it has not been narrated that he used to make takbir, Allahu Akbar, when he would go down for sajda or when he would come up. And we do not know that he ever gave the salam, except in one hadith which is narrated by Imam Abu Dawood, in which he made a takbir on the way down, but not on the way back up. This is actually my own personal position as well, but because when you're praying with packs, they get a bit heart attack, so you should give the other one. So but I remember once doing, for years, I remember 15 years leading salah, and for years I carried on doing that I would stick to this position very strictly, that Allahu Akbar upon going down. And why is that, by the way? The hadith Abu Dawood, is narrated as is there by Abdul Razak on the authority and by Abu Dawood in the book of Salah, and it is narrated on the authority of Nafi', on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar, that he said that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was reciting Quran to us, and when he would come across a sajda, he would make takbir, kabbara wa sajada wa sajadna. He would make takbir and he would go to prostration, and we would go to prostration as well. The Muhaqqiq says that the narrator, one of the people in the Sanad called Abdullah bin Umar al-Umari, he is weak, and Imam al-Nawawi said that this hadith has a weak chain. So this hadith is considered weak. Anyway, I used to act by this hadith, alright? Meaning that the go down, and then even actually I didn't like to say takbir on the way down, like what is clear from the Prophet ﷺ that he never used to. This is the only hadith which says he did. But I said, okay, I'd act upon this hadith. So I'd make takbir going on the way down, like you see all packs do. On the way back up, I couldn't justify it. I said, if they hear the recitation, it's obviously going to stand back up, isn't it? Because you're praying, isn't it? If you're praying and you come to a verse in the Quran, okay, first I couldn't even understand why I'd have to actually make takbir. If I go down, it should go down. Right? But then I thought, yeah, you know what makes sense, sisters, people in the back can't see. So I'll say, Allahu Akbar, long, loud, extra one, go down. But if I come back and I say, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهَا يعني I carry on reciting, you'd expect people to stand up. Anyway, I did it once and everyone was still in sajda. Everyone's still in sajda, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And then subhanAllah, I was saved by one guy. One guy, miskin, he just like said, you know what, forget it, I'm going to do it. So he stood up. So when he stood up, everyone else stood up. So then I turned around and I said, come on guys, man, when I started reciting, what you guys, we didn't know you never said Allahu Akbar. I said, what are you talking about? You're going to be following me, man, not following my statements. Yeah? And anyway, so, but after that I said, you know what, I'm going to say Allahu Akbar on my way back up. Anyway. Huh? This is just a tilawah, so yes, correct, yes, well said. This is obviously only if the sajda tilawah comes in a salah. So this issue is just talking about if a person is reading Quran, should he just say Allahu Akbar or not? The correct position is, if I'm reading Quran now and I come across sajda, I just go down. There's no Allahu Akbar on the way down, there's no Allahu Akbar on the way up, and there's no salam at all. That's the correct sunnah, okay? That's the first thing. The Prophet ﷺ, second evidence, the Prophet ﷺ, he did sajda in Surah Al-Najm, and the Muslims and the mushrikeen, they made sajda with him. And the mushrik, he can't even do a prayer. So therefore, and the Prophet ﷺ never said anything against them. Anyway, this is a weak evidence, of course. And Shaykh Uthaymeen says, if you really think about it, there's not really good, strong evidence. Anyway, he says, he goes, the person who thinks about it, if the person thinks about the Prophet ﷺ's sajda for shukr, then it will become very clear that he doesn't make any takbir. وَعَلَيْهِ لَا تَكُونْ سَجْدَ تِلَاوَةٍ شُكْرٍ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ وَحِينَئِذٍ يعني meaning that if you look at every single time that he made sajda shukr, there's no narration takbir. So basically his evidence is that whenever the Prophet ﷺ did either, it was never done. He goes, therefore, it is very, very clear for me that one does not, it is not haram. A person does not need to have wudu to do sajda tilawa or sajda shukr, even though it is recommended, of course, to have wudu, like it is always recommended to have wudu, because to make dhikr, it is always good to have wudu. He goes, however, it's not haram, and this is a position of Ibn Taymiyyah, and it is also authentically narrated from Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anh, that he would make the sajda of tilawa without wudu at all. And he goes, this is something which is a clear point. And he goes that if you also think about it, this makes sense, because you will lose especially in sajda shukr, you don't have to go, you just heard great news, you think to yourself, let me just quickly go and make wudu, then you might get hooked up in the bathroom, and then whatever, blah blah blah, then you might want to go to the toilet, and then all the excitement then drains out, and then the excitement's gone, and you come back out and say, that wasn't all that good news anyway. you miss out on the good moment, and so it's all over. Yeah, so anyway, I think this is a good position. I'll tell you something interesting. This is the longest lesson in history, by the way, yeah? People are dying, by the way, yeah? That's okay, I'm alright, that's alright. I'm the ill one, okay? And I'm against the hard pillar. And you guys have got like 1,000 chairs you can use. Some of the clever packs they're sitting on chairs. And you guys are just sitting on the floor. You should sit on a chair as well. Why not? Because they're at home, they're sitting on sofas, they're chilling, they're drinking tea, this, that, whatever. You can watch it at home if you want. You get more ajr here though. Anyway, what was I going to say? I remember when Pakistan, was it World Cup? They won the World Cup? No, it was T20 Cup. The T20, what was that? When was that? 2000, no, it wasn't long ago. 2006? 6? 7? 8? Something like that. 8 or 9, when they won the T20. And they all went into sajda. And they all went in all kinds of directions. Yeah, one went this way, one went that way, this, that, whatever, blah, blah. And then there was this big discussion. I remember writing an article on my blog then, next day. I said, they followed the sunnah, to be honest. No qibla needed, no wudu needed, just do it there and then. Sajda shukr. Oh, I got attacked so much. Oh, until you're Wahhabi, you are this, that, blah, blah. Anyway, alright, so that's good. Then finally, obviously, as such the tilawa, if it's in the Quran, if it's in the Salah, you must have wudu because you have to be praying. Yeah, I just mentioned that just in case. Okay. Finally, tawaf. Now, tawaf is something which, according to a number of scholars, it is not permissible to do around the house, the Kaaba, whether it is in Hajj or Umrah or just general visiting, unless you have wudu. It doesn't matter what day it is, in Hajj, outside of Hajj. Why is that? Because the Prophet ﷺ, it has been narrated in Bukhari, that when he wanted to make tawaf, he would make wudu and then make tawaf. First evidence. Second evidence, the hadith of Safiya, when it was said to him, ﷺ, Inna Safiyyata qad hadat, that Safiya, she's menstruating. And then he did not know that, he thought that means that she has not done tawaf al-ifada in Hajj, which is the main tawaf. So he said, Ahabasatnahi, yani, she's holding us back then? Holding us back then would suggest what? That if she's menstruating, then that means that she can't do the tawaf al-ifada, she's part of our caravan, therefore she's going to hold us back. Okay? And obviously if she's menstruating, that means she's in a state of, she's muhditha, she's not in a state of tahara. And number 3 evidence, hadith of Aisha, the Prophet ﷺ told her when she was menstruating, do everything that the normal Hajj you would do, just don't make the tawaf. Do everything that normal Hajj would do, just don't make the tawaf, which is obviously, which is trying to say, Fourth, the statement of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, الطواف البيت صلاة إلا أن الله باح فيه الكلام فلا تكلموا فيه إلا بخير. That tawaf around the house is a prayer. Other than the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed you to speak in it, so only speak good therein. Only speak good therein. So if it's a salah, then of course it should be having wudu. This has been narrated by Imam al-Tirmidhi, and you will find out in a minute. And finally, the 5th evidence is that they said, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَحِدْنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وإسماعيل أَن طَهِّرَ بَيْتِي لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْعَاكِفِينَ وَالرُّكَّعِ السُّجُودِ. And we told, and we made it obligatory upon Ibrahim and Ismail to purify the house for the people of Tawaf, people who are going to stay, and the people who are going to bow and prostrate. And so they've said that if you have to make the house pure, then of course the people who go in should also be pure. These are the 5 evidences that they used. Some of the scholars said, no, that there is no condition of purity for tawaf. Not condition, meaning there's no doubt it's good, but it's not a condition. And it's not haram, and if you make wudu, then it's going to be more perfect and more brilliant. They said, what's the evidence? They said, first of all, that there is no evidence clear that the Prophet ﷺ has said that the tawaf will not be accepted out. He said, never in his life did the Prophet ﷺ say, Allah will not accept the tawaf from someone who does not have wudu. That's the clear line they're looking for, the killer line. It's not there. They said, let's respond to the evidences. First one, the Prophet ﷺ making wudu before tawaf was just to recommend it. No evidence to obligate it, just to show that it is recommended. They said the hadith of Aisha and the hadith of Safiya, it just shows that the people of menstruation, they are the ones that are holding them back, not because of the fact of the tawaf, but because the menstruating women are not allowed to go into the masjid. So because they can't go into the masjid, meaning the Kaaba, towards the Kaaba, then they can't even make the tawaf. So it's working backwards almost, working backwards. The hadith of that we said that the tawaf around the house is a prayer. He goes, this is not a hadith which is authentic, and in actual fact, this is a statement of Abdullah ibn Abbas. It's not a hadith. Who agrees with him on that? If we go back and we look at it, it was considered to be a statement of Ibn Abbas, weak hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, an authentic statement of Ibn Abbas by Imam al-Nasa'i, by al-Bayhaqi, by Ibn Salah, al-Mundhari, and Imam al-Nawawi. So therefore they said it's a weak hadith. As for those that said it has been risen to the Prophet ﷺ, meaning it is a hadith, that was Ibn al-Sakan, Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, al-Hakim, And Ibn Hajar, Shaykh Uthaymeen says there are many reasons for the weakness of this hadith. Forget the chain, look at the text. The text says that the tawaf around the house is a prayer, so don't speak except good in it. He goes, well, of course, it's not. That's not a correct metaphor. It's not a prayer because you can walk in it. It's not a prayer because you can eat in it. It's not a prayer because you can drink in it. He goes, this kind of statement can't come from the Prophet ﷺ. It's a big call what he said there, but he's just basically trying to say that it's contradictory. It's contradictory. Anyway, he goes, as for the ayah, he goes that that Ibrahim and Ismail were told to purify the house. That doesn't prove anything. It doesn't mean that a person has to make wudu. It could mean he has to be clean as well, or it could just mean that a person's clean. He goes, the house is make it clean. Yes, make the house clean. For who? For at-ta'ifin. Yes, people make tawaf. Who else? The people in i'tikaf and the people who pray. Is it permissible for a person to go into the masjid for i'tikaf and he doesn't have wudu? Is it possible for a person? Yes, the answer is yes. Is it possible for the one who's about to go and pray to go into the house and not have wudu? Yes, it's allowed for him. So they said just like it's allowed for the second, third and fourth category, it's also allowed for the one who's making tawaf. Therefore, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says, therefore we hear his opinion is that the wudu is not a condition for tawaf, which, let me tell you, brothers and sisters, is a massive statement. And if that is correct, and it's certainly his position, and I have to say that I lean towards it, okay, even though there's no doubt, as Shaykh Uthaymeen says as well, that to make wudu is so much better. But if you have that, then that is an absolute game changer when it comes to Hajj and Umrah. I'll tell you that right now. Okay? Game changer when it comes to Hajj and Umrah. Because Sa'i doesn't need wudu at all. It's outside the masjid anyway, okay? It's running between two hills, and what do you need wudu for that for, yeah? Okay? So, that's that. But tawaf not either, then it's a big difference. Big difference. That actually takes out wudu from most of the actions, other than the prayers. Okay? Now, Shaykh finishes off this chapter. We're there nearly, okay? We're there. I know you're dying, yeah? But that's okay. Sometimes you need to die like this, yeah? Last two lessons were only like 45-50 minute, chop. So we gave you everything in one lesson, super lesson we'll call it. And we haven't even started the questions yet. And then he goes that if the only question that's remaining is the following. If your woman is there with you, any woman, and she is menstruating, and it's Hajj time, and the bus is about to go, and she just started, and it can't delay, what happens? And the scholars talked about it, and basically to summarize, Shaykh Uthaymeen goes with the position of Ibn Taymiyyah, which is the position that I also give a ruling by, and that is the position where majority of modern day scholars give fatwa by, which is that due to the necessity, due to darura, it's allowed for her to make the tawaf in her current state, because she has no other option. Otherwise she will miss Hajj, otherwise she will miss Umrah. What is she going to do, Miskina? And she's done everything, paid everything, then she's going to go home and come back with nothing, yani. So this is the position of Shaykh al-Islam, and he goes, this is correct. لكن يجب عليها, and and then he basically says something which, sisters find really offensive, but it has to be said, that they must not soil the masjid. Wear good sanitary pads, basically, is what he says. And that is the end of the chapter of Nawaqid al-Wudu, those things which invalidate the wudu. And I'm sure that we will have a nice summary of that available for you by next week as well, inshallah. And that is the end of the lesson for those who want to go, because I know that that's a killer. And for those who want to stay, then there will be some questions that are going to be coming up on the screen, which I agreed to answer, which was about the most stupidest thing I could ever have done in my life, I think. Okay? Because 160.
Good luck to you.
Oh my God. Right, okay. So
Go right down to the bottom. Go right down to the bottom.
So this is the bottom, the latest ones.
Started harassing me at the beginning. Lesson, man.
So did you not? I didn't tell them, isn't it, that they should start thinking. You should get a chair, by the way. Believe me.
Yeah.
Don't turn it down now, Shaz, because you'll be gutted afterwards. Let's take a couple of questions first on what we've said, and then we will do the questions on Salam. By the way, those who are watching, I made it very, very clear that the only questions that were going to be entertained were those that were on Salah that were not answered, not on anything else. Because the first question I can see is them talking about haram to shave the beard and whatever, yeah. And so basically this is people coming in and saying, yeah, let's have a party and ask what we want, do what we want, which would be very, very wrong. So first of all, questions on the class. Yes.
Oh, I want to ask the class position of the kids touching the Mus'haf.
So I believe that it is permissible for kids to touch the Mus'haf, and that they should be asked to make wudu as much as possible, but that it is not haram for them because they are not mukallaf. They don't have taklif, you know what I mean? They don't have to, yeah. To the age of puberty, yeah.
I was going to ask, if you take a picture of the Mus'haf of an ayah, or if you take a picture of a building with the Mus'haf written on it, would that count as the same as the mirror, or is that?
I think mirror. What else could it be? I mean, I think it has to be the mirror. If you take a picture of the Mus'haf, yeah. Then.
Yes, the sujood tilawat, just to clarify, so when you're reading Quran, basically, there's no Allahu Akbar on the way down or up.
No Allahu Akbar on the way down, no Allahu Akbar on the way up, and certainly no Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah when it comes to the sajda tilawah. Now I just want to make it very clear that there's a big difference between reciting Quran and touching the Quran. So to recite the Quran, I just want you to know that for everything to do with the Quran and deen and dhikr, wudu is legislated. You should make wudu for every dhikr. And that's every act of ibadah. Our question is not about that. Our question is, what is it a condition for? What is obligatory? When do we sin? And so when we talk in those kind of black and white terms, we have determined that to recite the Quran is something which is permissible for the one who does not have wudu, no problem. To touch the physical Quran, you should be having wudu. When it comes to the reciting of the Quran by heart, an ayah of sajda comes along and you make the sajda, you won't have wudu, and it's not a problem. If you are reading from the Quran, we said that you must be actually having wudu, so you would have wudu for sajda tilawah anyway. I just want to make that very, very clear. Yep.
Well, if you listen to the CD and the tilawah comes again and again, or when you're memorizing the Quran,
yes.
you sit in one place.
Yes, the ruling of that, okay, because I don't want to get into that because the sajda tilawah and sajda shukr has its own section, which is later. But yes, you can recite it 50 times and only make one sajda because you're learning it. Yes. At one sitting, yeah. You right there and then you're reciting the same ayah, you only make one sajda shukr.
So will the Muslims ever touch Lawh Mahfuz?
Will the Muslims ever touch the Lawh al-Mahfuz, Zafar? What do you think? No. Zafar said no. They're talking about the angels. We're saying that the only beings that will touch it will be the angels. Okay, alright. So I just want to make it very clear that there are questions here.
From the bottom, yeah?
Start from the bottom, right from the bottom. So I'm going to make it very, very clear what I'm going to do, okay? First of all, again, I emphasize, if you wish to go home, then you are completely free to do so, but you might find these beneficial, inshallah. And I'm going to be answering them very, very quickly because it is late, but I will answer them as well. I'm not here to discuss psychological discussions or the theoretical ones, just the fiqh ones, which are quick, halal, haram, is this wrong, is that right, etc., etc. So we discussed that the pointing of the index finger was a sunnah, which was determined by the companions witnessing that the Prophet ﷺ would move it in tashahhud. And we also established that the class position is to point the index finger from the beginning of tashahhud. Is this correct given that we won't see the finger move as the evidence suggests? Yes, that is correct. My position is that the finger is to be held in this manner, like that, and the movement that is mentioned in any hadith was the going up and the eventual going down. And that's why And that the reason for that is because there's no evidence clear that it was rocking. This action, it is not clear from the hadith authentically that this happened all the way through. Rather, we know that it moved. So this move could have been the going up once and then coming back down again. It could also have been when it was up and someone reciting, it's almost automatically, psychologically, the finger might move when you're speaking and making dua, like Ibn al-Qayyim said. So that is the position of the class. Could you give advice on how to bring parents to start praying? Unfortunately, I can't. That's unfortunately too big a question. When you shorten prayers, do you always need to combine? No, it's the exact opposite. When you shorten prayers, you are not to be combining the prayer. It is only permissible. It's only permissible. It is not part of it's not part of traveling to have to actually combine the prayers. Okay? So when you shorten the Dhuhr prayer, that is it. It is not that you then pray. Are you watching the questions? Oh, you got a question there as well? Yep.
Unless you're traveling, yeah?
I'm talking about traveling. Listen to me carefully. People who are traveling, they make this big mistake. They say, I'm going to have to shorten the prayers. If I shorten the prayers, that must mean that I must combine. This is wrong. It's the exact opposite. Shortening is one thing, combining is another thing. It is sunnah to shorten, it is not sunnah to combine. Is that clear, everybody? It is sunnah to shorten the prayer, it is not sunnah to combine. It is permissible to combine. Only permissible. In fact, as I said in the class, you should avoid combining. The scholars, Ahlul Ilm, do not combine unless they are actually on the road traveling. But once they get there to their hotel, which they're staying for one night, then they pray Maghrib, they pray Isha later on that night too. Don't combine the prayers. If you're very, very tired and you're this and you're that, okay, fine, you can combine. If you're praying in a congregation and a woman leaves in the middle of the prayer, is it okay to shift to the left or right? Yes, it is sunnah to close the gap that a leaving person leaves. And that can be 1 or 2 steps. The steps do not matter as long as it's directly to the right, to the left, straight in front, or a single diagonal walk. What's not permissible is that someone sits behind people down on the right hand side, they walk out and you have a little gander all the way over there and you then just slot in there. That's what's not allowed. But 1 to the right, 1 to the left, 1, 2 to the front, 1, 2 to the diagonal. That's something which is not only is it allowed to, it's a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, which is authentic, it's the best step. 3, when you read Surah Al-Fatiha whilst praying, with the right hand over the left hand on the chest, and you say Ameen, are you supposed to move your right hand or finger? No. In Surah Al-Fatiha whilst praying, there's no moving of the hand whatsoever. Fiqh Salah question. In regards to OCD in a religion, if someone continuously feels the need to do sajda for every salah, at what point do they draw the line? They draw the line in that they don't do it at all. There is no sajda sahwi in the prayer at all unless you miss something out or add something or you forget something as per the rules that we covered in class. When reciting Quran in salah, is the Surah Fatiha minimum for every rak'ah? Yes is the answer. Is there any basis to reciting the surah after the Fatiha in the first 2 rak'ah of Farz Salah and all the rak'ah of Sunnah Salah? Yes, of course there is. There are hundreds of ahadith that show that the Prophet ﷺ recited a surah, but only that these are recommended, not obligatory, in all of the units of the Fard prayer as well. So I know that we have this idea that, for example, in 4 rak'ah Isha, you have 2 full and 2 empty, where you pray surah, you recite surahs only in the first 2 and then not in the last 2. That is correct. That's the normative practice of the Prophet ﷺ. However, it is also narrated that he recited it in the 3rd and the 4th as well, something short. So sometimes it is sunnah to revive that sunnah and recite something in the 3rd, recite something in the 4th, even if it's only Qul Huwallahu Ahad. But the normative practice is that in the Fard prayers, you recite only in the first 2 and not in the second 2, and all throughout the Sunnah prayer, and that has been narrated by mutawatir hadith. We won't, you know what, we won't for this.
It's about that point.
You know why we won't? Because we're going to be here for donkey's years. I swear we will be, because that's like the first 5 questions out of 6,000. During the class, you didn't state it was impermissible for women to pray in public. You didn't state it was impermissible, i.e. bending down in the view of men. Does this mean that a woman can pray in a park or some area of a shopping center if she lost track of time, etc.? And also, could you clarify that it is indeed permissible to pray in changing rooms with music? Yes, I said it is permissible to pray in changing rooms with music, and I said that there's a difference between sama wal istama'. Yani istima'a wa sima'a is different. When you hear something, there's one ruling. When you listen to something, it's a different ruling. So when you are in a shop or whatever, you hear it, that's not listening to the music. And even if you listen to the music, it is not an invalidator of the prayer as long as you maintain your khushu'. As for praying outside, I said that I didn't say it was haram, outright haram, because someone's going to try and cover themselves in some kind of way. But many of the scholars considered it to be impermissible for a woman to be praying in a mixed in an area which is public, exposed in front of the people, where they can see her bending down, and that is the safest position to hold. And so therefore a person, if they are in a park or whatever, they should do it out of the way of people or in a corner and so on. If one added and deducted during a prayer, what is preferred in this scenario to perform? No, forget that I've written that, Sophia. Go and look at the notes. I've answered that very clearly, because you haven't asked about a scenario, you just asked about the principle. The principle is very clearly there. I want to ask you to clarify how exactly you would correct your salah if you miss a rukn. So if you forgot to do a ruku' and you are in sujood, how would you go back to the ruku' position? So here we go. I am praying dhuhr prayer, and in my first rak'ah I completely forgot to make ruku'. I'm now in my second rak'ah in sajda, and I suddenly realized, goodness me, I forgot my ruku' in my first rak'ah. What happens now? You get straight up from your sajda and you go straight into ruku'. So you just stand up and go into your ruku'. That's the first thing that you do. The second thing that you do is to realize that you are now back again in your first rak'ah, and the prayer continues from there. The third thing that you do is that you realize at the end of the prayer that you've now actually prayed 5 units because of your mistake. Then you will make the sajda sahw after you give the taslim. Okay? Or before the taslim, it doesn't matter. Before you give salam or after the salam, it doesn't matter. As I said in the class, both are accepted, and you will do 2 sajda and then assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I hope that point is clear. Could you touch on the subject of the prohibition of women attending the mosque, which was declared by Aisha? Just that I will only say that this is because he saw the time getting bad, women getting looser, quote unquote, standards, condition. We're talking about niqab, hijab, beauty, perfuming. The whole kind of concepts of the dangerous signs of a woman going outside and being a fitna. This is what she was talking about. She was not happy with it. She said if the Prophet ﷺ was here at this time, he would have prevented you going out. It's a warning. It is not an evidence in itself. The one who prays witr before sleeping and then wakes up early and decides to pray tahajjud, do they have to pray the witr again, or is it optional? I believe it is optional. I don't think it is obligatory, and there's difference of the scholars upon that. Okay, there's difference of scholars upon that, and the reason why someone has said that the witr is the prayer of the last prayer of the night, you need to pray witr again. They already did that, and then they took an opportunity to pray. So there is difference. Some said you must, some said didn't, and I, for myself, I'm accepting of both opinions. In regarding to sisters, I know you said it's not permissible for one to pray sitting in a car if they are able to stand. Does this apply for women as well? As you said, it isn't good for women to pray in a public space. I said that a woman mustn't be caught out in a public space. If they're in a car, they must get themselves home or to an area which is closed off. If there was a scenario where she's not able to get home, she's not able to drive to a place where she can stand because she must stand, unless she is pregnant or ill or sick or something, she has no excuse to sit down. So unless she cannot find any single place, then and outside she looks and is very dangerous, or she fears for herself, then she's allowed to pray sitting down. Because the ruling on praying sitting down on a plane, for example, is based entirely upon fear, no other reason. Because it's just about possible to pray on a plane as well, standing. But the reason, as I said, as I explained in the class in detail, is that it is because of fear. If I join in the middle of a rak'ah, when I pray what I have missed after, do I need to pray this rak'ah in full too? I'm late and I join in the middle of rak'ah. When I pray what I have missed after, do I need to pray this rak'ah in full too? No. I said that in the class. But if a person comes late and you are there in the surah or in Fatiha, you caught that rak'ah, that's your first rak'ah, that's it. As long as you catch an imam in ruku', that entire rak'ah has been caught. That goes down as number one. Okay? I have a bit of confusion with the qasr. I'm about to drive to an airport in a taxi, and this drive lasts the entire period of dhuhr. And I intend to pray asr at the airport, because as qasr prayer, as qasr, because my traveller status will begin at the airport. Is it better to pray dhuhr in a taxi, i.e. within dhuhr time but missing the rukn of standing, or is it better to pray dhuhr with asr in the airport as a concession, even though technically dhuhr didn't fall during the actual traveller status time? This is a good question, and it shows a misunderstanding, so I want you to understand something. Your traveller status starts when you leave your home, but your traveller benefits start when you actually out of the city, which we said is the ring road or the airport. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean by that you cannot actually do qasr or combine or anything until you are in that zone, outside of the ring road or the airport. But when you leave your home and you are a traveller, you can make the intention, and you must make the intention, that I am now going to pray my dhuhr at the airport. Even though you are moving and you're still at home or still on the doorstep or just getting a taxi, you will say, I am going to pray my dhuhr and my asr together at the airport. And so that's what would happen. So no, at all would you, no, you mustn't pray dhuhr in the taxi. You must pray it actually afterwards, because you're missing out the rukn of standing, and you have the perfect permission to combine over there at the airport. So when you get there, you'll pray the 2 dhuhr and you pray the 2 asr, whether it's dhuhr time or asr time. If one did wudu and then put a little makeup on, which is non-waterproof, could they wudu over that again, or they have to take the makeup off? They have to take the makeup off. How can you make up for a major mistake in your previous salah that completely invalidated it, missing a rukn? I don't know what that question means. Okay? I don't understand what that means. You told us that to follow one particular madhab if you are not a student of knowledge. Is it okay to follow the class positions you have been giving us on each issue? Yes, you can. And as with that there says, please go and look at that thread and watch that first lesson where I explain this in detail. Can you please let me know if it's correct to raise my index finger during tashahhud when I say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah until before doing salam to right and left? Yes, of course, this is the Hanafi position and a position of the Shafi'is as well. I said just my position, my class position is that it starts at the beginning, at Tahiyyatu Lillah, and stays there. But with the other ulama, it is up and down at Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. This is completely permissible. And if a person lift it at Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and to hold it there until he said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, so it's down, التحيات لله, and then أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. This is the Shafi'i position. Okay, I believe, as the Hanbalis do, that there's no evidence to start it at Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and that's why we start from the beginning. But is it permissible, like the sister is asking? Yes, it is an opinion which is held by the Shafi'i school, and that's not a problem. Can you pray standing up throughout the salah if sitting down is painful due to an injury? If yes, how do you make the ruku' and the sajda? Like this person, Batman, says, well done. Whoever Batman is, jazakallah khair. The exactly correct answer. Can you talk? Can you reply back to a question when making wudu, if you have the intention not to pray the wudu, nafil prayer? Alright, the question is being asked that I want to pray the 2 rak'ah nafil after wudu, the reward of which is Jannah, as long as you don't speak. Whilst I'm making the wudu, am I allowed to respond to a question? Now the question, if it's a necessary one, then there's absolutely no doubt about that. That's fine. Someone asks something urgent, that's okay. What's not allowed is chatting and talking about some kind of stuff and whatever. So that's what you should avoid. When going to sajda, do you put on knees first or hands first? The class position is that you go knees first. It's acceptable either way, but the class position, knees first. Why is this thing jumping? Because
more comments, more questions.
Yeah, just remember where to stop, because we're not going to take these questions for the next 6 hours. So have an idea about where people start taking the beats, yeah? Right. Can you repeat the same second surah in the same salah because you want to? Yes, you can. Qul huwallahu ahad, first rak'ah, second, third and fourth, no problem. What was the class position as to when qunut should be recited? Not at all, before ruku' or after ruku'. My class position was the exact opposite. I said not at all, before ruku' and after ruku'. That's what I said in the class, okay? The class position is that you should sometimes leave it out, as the sunnah was. I said you should do it before ruku', as the sunnah was, and you should do it after ruku', as the sunnah was, in order to revive the sunnah by the Prophet ﷺ. If you make a mistake in your sunnah prayers, do you do sajda sahwu as well? Yes. I forgot to mention that in class, so I'm glad you did. The sajda sahwu applies to all prayers, obligatory and non-obligatory. In sajda, you said one is not allowed. I just want to say, folks, please stop asking extra questions. Jazakumullah khair, because we do have to go home before midnight tonight. Okay? In sajda, you said one is not allowed to use dua which are from the Quran. Yes. What was the reason for this? And does this apply for both obligatory and nafil prayers? Yes, it does. It is not from the Quran, it is the Quran. One does not recite the Quran. And that's why I said to just change it from Rabbana atina fid dunya to Allahumma atina fid dunya hasana. Yani just change the ayah. And that does apply in sunnah. And you can make dua in sujood in your own language in the obligatory prayers. I believe you can. In addition to saying Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. As Isha has 17 rak'ah, do we have to pray 2 nafil at the end? No, because the 17 rak'ah is the opinion of some of the Hanafi scholars. There's no evidence that it has 17 rak'at, and the only thing which is obligatory is the 4, and then 3 witr, and 2 sunnah is 2 sunnah. Everything else is optional, and it's not even agreed upon. From the any non-rukn errors made by a masbuq in the rak'ah that he doesn't do with the imam still swallowed by him? Yes. Any mistake that you make when you're praying behind an imam, any mistake that are non-rukn, non-essential, they are all swallowed by the imam. You do not have to make sajda sahwu. He's the one who deals with it by the fact that you're leading him, which is one of the great advantages of praying in jama'ah. Also regarding takbiratul intiqal, the takbir of movement, Allahu Akbar. Is this said at the start, middle or end of the movement? And I said that it is... I want you to know that it is whatever it is. It has to say, you have to do it before you move. That's the point. So whether you do it at the beginning or in the middle or during, that's the key. Of course you can't do it at the end. You can't go down and say Allahu Akbar. You have to start it when you're moving. That's the whole point of saying takbir intiqal. Okay? Could you explain the concept of a sutra? The sutra is basically a sunnah, something which you put in front of you. It gives you a prayer zone just a little bit ahead of your sajda place, and it's small, like a small bag, handbag, saddle is an example. If you don't have something big, then you can use it in a line just to show and guide out your place. If I finished work at 3:30 and I found that the sky was yellow, although Maghrib was at 4:20, does this mean at 3:30 it became the makruh time to pray Asr, even though we have 40 minutes in Maghrib? And do we withhold Asr if the sun has already begun to set? Now you listen to me carefully, Yasmin. This is a good question. Number one, yes, the scholars, majority of them, other than the Hanafi school, the majority of the scholars consider that at 1 hour before Maghrib is makruh time for Asr. 1 hour before Maghrib, so 40 minutes definitely. And as you say, when you see the yellowness in the sky, it becomes makruh. You must pray, but it's a disliked prayer. You should have prayed it earlier, but you have to pray. Next question. If the sun then starts to set, so we are now in the very, very yellow period now where it's actually setting, do we hold off our Asr or do we pray? No, you have to pray Asr because the time is running out, but it is a haram prayer. So what that is an example of is you being punished for praying a haram time, but your prayer is accepted. It does not need to be repeated. You can't do haram prayer. You can't say, oh, it's haram and then not pray, because then you have to repeat the prayer as well and you did haram. It's like a worse haram. So what I'm saying is if you pray after Maghrib, it's worse. So you should pray it there and then. Pray it there and then, and there's some discussion about that, about leaving it or not and praying it afterwards, but I think you should pray it there and then, because some of the ulama, they said that you might not then have a chance to pray afterwards, something might happen, etc, etc, etc. It is in principle permissible for a person to wait until afterwards, but it is a worse sin. The Asian upbringing teach you to read in a set way. For instance, Isha, you read 4 sunnah, 4 fard, 2 sunnah, 2 nafil, 3 witr, 2 nafil. Where have the 4 sunnah come from? Some hadith and it is not agreed upon only on a Hanafi school. It's okay to follow them if you're a Hanafi, otherwise you do not need to pray them. We were taught to read Fatiha and Surah in the first 2 rak'ah and only Fatiha in the last 2. Is there any basis to this? Yes, the Sunnah indicates that. Regarding the sutra to indicate the prayer zone, do we need to practice at home? It's a Sunnah to do it at home and in the masjid. Yes. The palms of hands supposed to face Qibla? Yes, they are, but if they don't, because it's a bit like this, so it should be straight, but if it's like this, it is no major problem. It's flexible. What does one do if they forget to make sajda sahwi once missing a wajib action? They have to then go back and make sajda if you do not make sajda sahwi within 5 to 10 minutes of finishing a prayer that was deficient because you missed the wajib and then you forgot to do sajda sahwi, and then you remember within 5 or 10 minutes and you're still in the masjid, then you can still make the sajda sahwi and that's fine. But if 5 or 10 minutes go by or you walk out the door of the masjid, you have to pray the entire prayer again. You lost the opportunity to make up for it with a sajda. The punishment is to pray the whole prayer again, quote unquote. I'm sorry, Nigat, I can't do that. I remember reading a hadith where Aisha was asked to fetch a mushaf from the masjid whilst on her menses. I'm not sure about that. Please clarify if to make up all our individual missed prayers in the past. I said you didn't. Please see your notes of your students. For istikhara, do you mention the matter once or twice? And you mention it twice, but in the second time you can just say the issue. And you can speak in English, by the way. You know the dua al-istikhara? When you make istikhara, the dua, that should be in Arabic. But when it comes to the issue of mentioning it, there's not a requirement that you have to say it in Arabic itself. You can just say the issue, the matter, explain it, whatever. It's not actually important to say that in Arabic. You advise to pray in your shoes if you can, as that is sunnah. But we walk everywhere with our shoes, so we won't know if we walked over urine or not. So isn't it best to take them off? Well, if you think that you've just recently been in urine, then yeah, it is. But no, people don't always walk in urine and stuff like that. And every couple of steps that you do, the rest of the stuff clears it off. This is an amazing cleansing manner. So no, you don't need to worry about that. Could you clarify the issue of menstruating women entering the masjid? Am I correct in saying that she can enter for classes in separate rooms as long as she doesn't sit in the actual prayer area? That's what I said. I said that she should avoid taking up the space of a woman who is not on her period and she wants to pray. Is it also not allowed to touch a book of tafsir? I covered that. You are allowed to. If one misses a prayer due to sleep, they need to pray as soon as they wake up. Correct. However, if the prayer is missed due to an operation, or one fainted and was unconscious, or one is in a coma, they do not need to make up the salah. Yes, I said that, but only if it's after 3 days. If you wake up within 3 days, you regain consciousness within 3 days, then you should make up the prayers that you missed. But however, after 3 days of unconsciousness, for whatever reason, you do not need to make up the prayer. If sajda sahwi is done incorrectly, how can this be rectified? Then it can't be rectified. If you've done it incorrectly, then you've left the prayer. If you realize afterwards you've done it wrong, you've got to pray again. Have taken note that all prayers are 2, except the 2 sunnah of Fajr and Witr. I had thought Maghrib is also 3. Maghrib of course is 3. I said that. Maghrib never changes. Maghrib never changes. I said that. Clarification as to what is meant as having quarter rak'ah as an individual or in congregation. The clarification is that I described that on stage, man. Huh? Yeah, to just get into ruku', that's it. It doesn't matter that the imam is coming up, you just get into ruku' and you don't have to say anything. You need to try and say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, but if you didn't, the prayer will still be valid. Okay? As long as the imam has not said Sami Allahu liman hamida. Can you combine the nafil salah of wudu with any of the optional salah associated with the 5 obligatory prayer? In my opinion, no, it should be offered separately. When in ruku', can we bend our legs to achieve the straight back? No, you need to keep your legs straight. The only time that you need to bend your legs is if they themselves are causing pain to the back. Okay? Causing pain to the back.
What did you teach over the weekends? Over the past 2 weekends? What did you answer in the questions?
Wallah, I took so many questions.
What were you doing?
Honest to God, I took so many questions. I don't know what on earth is happening here. Honest to God, I've got no idea. Honest to God, Shaz. Okay? And if you've already started to pray and see a gap, should you fill the gap? Yes. If it's in front of you, yes. A sister left home at, oh my God, Shaz, I hope you kept a count on where they're blagging it.
From the beard. We're not even
a quarter
of the way up.
Are we not? As you go home, we'll sort it out, don't worry. A niqab, I'm serious, bro, we can do it. I know how to press the thingy. A niqabi left house at an appropriate time and is on a train, but there's no place to safely stand and pray. Salah time is finishing. Wouldn't make it in time to pray at destination. What would she do? No, you wouldn't pray sitting down. If this is a one-off scenario and it's Maghrib which is finishing, then she'll pray with Isha. If it was Asr that was finishing, she'd have to pray it there and then sitting down. The reason is because, as I said, Dhuhr and Asr is flexible and Maghrib and Isha are flexible, but not Asr to Maghrib. That's the end of a prayer time, okay? And if there are people around that she felt unsafe to sit and pray, yeah, same thing. I am a migraine patient. I know when it starts with a slight pain, if I go down for sujood, it will become worse. Am I allowed to pray straight away sitting down, even when the migraine pain is very mild? Yes, that is permissible. The pain does not need to be very heavy. The threat of the pain is enough for you to pray sitting down. At my office meeting, before I pray alone, can I give the adhan and iqamah with a low voice? Yes, you can. If you're a sister, I don't know, then you should not. Okay, it's best to avoid it. Would one need wudu if one were to access the Quran on a mobile device? We said yes. What if, it would be on the safe side. What if one forgets to say remember later? I said that already, you've got to repeat the prayer. If you normally pray Asr at the later time, and you are traveling, and know that on your way, hold on Rizwana, you are blagging that, man. You are not part of that class, don't even try it. If a brother does not attend the congregational prayer at the local mosque and remains at home, can he pray before the Jama'ah time? Yes, he can. If you only have access to a Hanafi Salah timetable, how does one calculate Shafi Asr time? You can't calculate Shafi Asr time, so you have to go by a timetable that you have in front of you. To calculate Shafi Asr time is beyond your and my ability, requires an observatory. My question is requiring to follow a madhab. If you are la madhabi due to being a lay person rather than choice, and you are taught by many different teachers and institutes, blah blah blah, when it comes to salah, is it okay to be following many different schools' opinions on different things like wiping socks, combining? Yes, it is, no problem. As long as you're following a teacher in each one and you are following your desires, it's no problem. The issue is easy. I have seen some make wudu before reading from a book of hadith. This is done out of adab. It's certainly not an obligation. Okay, it's done out of adab. Can you pray the 2 rak'ah salah of tawaf after asr salah? I think you can, because that is a prayer of reason. Okay, I believe it is permissible. Are there 4 rak'ah of sunnah salah before fard isha? Yes, there are. They're called ghair muqada, as you Paks call it, and that is something which is permissible, inshallah. Some of the scholars said the hadith is authentic, some said it's not so, but the Hanafis do, and that's good. If there is a moment of silence in salah, if you forget where you are, is there a duration of silence that will nullify the prayer? No, there is no obvious duration that will nullify the prayer, and that's something which you can continue with. That's not a problem, unless you are quiet for like half an hour or something. So it's going to be something extreme. In a jama'ah outside a masjid, you're at a relative's house, you don't agree with the chosen imam, it's an uncle, so you can't openly disagree. What should you do? Just pray the jama'ah. I don't understand that one, sorry. What if you have a screen protector on your phone?
You don't have to touch it, you can just slide at the top.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the Shawn of the Hakim. I'm not sure. I think, bruv, touch it at the bottom. Yeah, we want to be on the safe side, bruv. Yeah. Congregational prayer. Should one join at all times, even if they have missed the last ruku'? Yes, they should. Sunnah in the prohibited times. Sunnah wudu salah in all prohibited times. And if not, can it be made up? No, it can't be made up. You should avoid the prohibited times. Iqamah for women only. Congregation, is it sunnah? Yes. No, it's not sunnah. Permissible, in my opinion. Raising of the hands. Do this at the beginning of the position. Therefore, coming up from ruku', you move back up, putting hands down to the side, then raise them again at qiyam stage. No. The coming up from ruku', and there is difference of opinion on this. But no, I believe that the sunnah for raising your hands when you rise up is to raise them when you're coming up. Not that you come up and hands out your side, Sami Allahu liman hamida rabbana wa lakal hamd, Allahu Akbar. That is a held opinion. But that's not the position of the majority, certainly not mine. Okay? Does a person have to follow one madhab? No, he doesn't have to follow one madhab. Changing your intention to a different one from asr to dhuhr, as you had not prayed it. Changing obligatory to a different one from asr to dhuhr as you had not. No, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Of course, you cannot do that. Okay, you have to break your salah and start again. Some people go to sajda after salah has ended to make dua in English. That's haram, that is. Absolute haram. That's bid'ah to do that. Okay? To go into sajda after the prayer. Who does that? On what basis is that? I was praying, this is bid'ah. I was praying Jama'ah with a sister who I asked, should we pray together? But she wasn't reciting out loud. It was Maghrib. And because I made the intention, I continued with her till the end. She was actually praying by herself. Do I repeat that? No. That was a Jama'ah. Because, that's what you thought you were doing. And it doesn't matter what she was doing. Okay? But she will end up praying Maghrib anyway. You get what you intended for. I was praying, Aisha, you are killing it. My girl is killing it. I was praying in a women congregation, 5th line back. So I could not see who was leading. It was a young girl and did not seem to know how to lead and continued to the end. She was not pubescent. Okay. Should it be repeated? And could I break away when I know things are going wrong? Yes, it is permissible to go away when it's wrong. Something's messed up. Avoid that though, but it is permissible. And yes, post-pubescent, prepubescent girl. Prepubescent girl in a women's jama'ah. I mean, if I was a girl, I would break away from that. Yeah, Allah knows best. If we're not supposed to touch the Quran, what's the hukum of women reading the Quran whilst on periods? It's allowed for women to read on period. I believe that. Some scholars said no, she's like the one who's sexually impure, because there's no doubt the majority of the scholars, in fact I think ijma' maybe, that the one who's sexually impure in janaba, they're not allowed to recite the Quran. That's fine. They said that the one who's menstruating is qiyas upon her, analogy upon her. We say what Ibn Taymiyyah said, there's not a single statement or evidence that prohibits the one who's menstruating from reciting the Quran. And when it comes to the rest of the rulings, then she uses gloves and phones and all the rest of it. The room is so small that the sisters remain on their side, but the brothers are sometimes on level with them, even though they are dividers which split them. Is the congregation prayer permissible? Side by side with a divider. Yes, I think that's permissible. Allah knows best. It's not sunnah though. Can you use a prayer mat with a picture of a Kaaba? Which Yani prayer mat doesn't have a picture of the Kaaba? What kind of pack are you, man? That's no problem, nigga. Okay, we're not joking. Yeah, that's okay. Should the 4 rak'ah sunnah before Dhuhr be praying 2 by 2? Yes, 2 by 2. Hanafis say 4, but the sunnah is 2 by 2. Unbelievable. The next one's unbelievable. Has the announcement been made yet for us to start posting questions? You're a don, Zubair. You're a don. What about the gloves? I've got no idea about the gloves. So then why can you use a cloth to carry it around? Okay, that's all that stuff. Brilliant. Yep. You can use a stylus. Brilliant idea. I wish someone had thought about that. By the way, whoever saw Dragon's Den the other day, because I saw it today. See that guy Raj? The Hindu guy from, I think, he looked Hindu anyway. And I hope he wasn't Muslim, stuff like that would be so bad. But I'm pretty sure he was a Hindu, he was, yeah. And he definitely from Geordie, he was definitely. Anyway, Miskeen, what is funny, he had a glove and he called it the eye glove. And basically it's a glove that has 7% silver in it, which allows for enough heat transfer to work on phones and stuff. So he's created the whole kind of, whatever. So he's made like about 150 grand's worth of sales in 4 years. And anyway, so Deborah Mead, and she was out. The other girl was out. Kelly, whatever her name is. And that other Pak, whatever he is. Is he Pak or is he, what is he? I don't know. Indian guy. He's out. And then what's his name? The other one, loudmouth. What's his name? Peter Jones? Yeah, Peter Jones. Yeah. Peter Jones cussed the absolute life out of the guy. He cussed him so badly. He cussed him. He goes, he goes, have you got a patent on this? And the skinny Indian, he goes, yeah, 3 years ago I trademarked it, eye glove, whatever. He goes, you know what? You got nothing. You got nothing. And Deborah Meason goes, what do you mean he's got nothing? He goes, he's got nothing. Apple were to come along today, they would take all your money, they would launch a lawsuit against you, blah, 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 blah. There's been an argument on the panel. Then they all said, actually, he's the guy who knows telecoms, whatever. So like Duncan Valentine, he got a bit, got him. He goes, what do you know about what thing? He goes, I'll give you your 75 grand. Yallah, let's do it. So he did it, yeah.
You can buy those gloves at every single petrol station.
Wallahi, that's why I'm saying the story. Because when you look at it, that some Chinese guy is going to put 8% silver in, and he's going to sell it for 50p.
All over the show.
And But that's why I said he got angry. He did it like, I think, our personal thingy. But anyway, the point is that we should have used those gloves. The sisters can get a pair of those gloves, and you can use your swiping on your iPhone and your iPad.
Or just swipe at the top of the screen.
Or just swipe at the top of the screen on the bottom and not have to worry about it. Only an iPhone, yeah.
I'm trying to get an iPhone.
It's a sunnah to make taslim after the imam has given salam to right and left. Is it sunnah to make taslim after the imam? I don't understand what that means. Oh, right. Yeah. It says after. Yes, after. But when I say after, I don't mean delay. So there's no evidence to stop and wait while he goes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, you don't move. It should be, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. No, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum. No, that's much delay. Yeah, it just be just after. How can women read the Quran? I've got a video on that. Okay, just type those words into the Google and you'll find it. How does one advise someone in issues like when a person who's unaware of the ruling, but she... Oh, that's a big question, man. Sorry. Allah, a big question. Don't ask big questions, please. I have read that if one laughs out loud in salah with an open mouth, this invalidates the wudu in addition to the salah. Is this correct? Please advise. I said this in the class. It's the salah and not the wudu. Salah and not the wudu. Yes, tahajjud alone you can recite loudly. Yes, you should avoid praying in front of a mirror. The scholars dislike that and it's out of focus, so you should pray to the side. If you see like half your arm or something, that's okay. But you should miss the entire image or the majority of the image. Can one pray the witr with 3 units together and other times 2 to 1? Yes, I said in the class that is the sunnah to alternate between that. So 3 together sometimes and then 2 and then 1 separately sometimes. What is the ruling regarding lifting and folding the trousers at the ankles in salah? I believe that should be avoided. I believe that a person should either have his trousers up before the prayer and at all times and not just for the salah, because this is a contradiction of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said don't fold up your stuff, everything should make sajda. Hair shouldn't tie up, sleeves you shouldn't roll up. You know, some people they might do that because they don't want their sleeves to touch the thing. Whereas if you had done that beforehand for wudu, for example, and then you hadn't taken them down and you prayed like that, that's no problem. But if you're just starting to stand for salah, you see the dirty area and then you do your sleeves up like this to avoid your sleeves touching when you go to sajda, this is not allowed. Likewise the hair, likewise the trousers. I believe that a person does not need to lift their trousers above their ankles if it's trousers. Okay? Is it permissible to do Tahiyatul Masjid during the prohibited times? I said yes in the class. Please look at the further details as well. Janazah, some give salam to the right only. The right only is only what is obligatory. But if you do right and left, then that's the complete. That's fine. Can a sister who believes in covering the feet during salah be led by a sister who doesn't? Yes, they can. And vice versa.
And that's it.
Is that thingy here? Done? Done. Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu feek. Oh, sorry. We have to, the one last page here. Oh, sorry. Deception. If anyone's still alive. Yeah. And then this fiqh of deception by Sa'ad Miskeen. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And please someone teach him how to play cricket. Someone give him some Kansas. Someone show him, something, whatever. That's this weekend, University of Salford Friday. Okay, Max? If a woman did Umrah but had her menstruation in the last few days but before leaving and did not do Tawaf as in the final Tawaf before leaving, what can she do now? Is there anything she can do? It was over 6 years ago. She didn't do it. If she didn't do it, unfortunately that Umrah was not done. That's it. And the only thing now is to repeat that Umrah and that's it. Because what she should have done, she did the right thing. Let me make it very clear. And maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will write that Umrah down for her if she decided not to do the Tawaf because she was on menstruation and she believed so and she didn't do it for that reason, then maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward her because she came down and she stuck to the Sunnah or what she thought to be the Sunnah. As you've heard, my opinion was that she was in that position, she should have gone and done it anyway and Allah would have accepted it, inshaAllah. And that is my opinion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. And جزاكم الله خير. And that was a lesson which was Shaz, I don't get that. It's just 32 minutes.
There's probably gone over 4 gigabytes. So create a new file or something.
Right.
I don't know how long the lesson was.
Go on, tell me how long the lesson was, bro. We can't do that again.
2 hours and 2 minutes.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
2 minutes. 2 hours, 2 minutes and 10.
That's not bad. No, it mustn't. No, it was much more than that. It was much more than that. Yeah, much more than 2 hours. Anyway, Jazakumullah khair, everybody. Okay, I've got a flight tomorrow morning, a bunch of packs. I'm dead now. What am I going to do? Yeah, everyone's moaning. Yeah, what about me? I should moan as well. If those people don't write some any positive comments, I'm going to kill them all. Unbelievable.
Done?
Done. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feek. Thank you very much. Next week we are